Forever hold your peace. All right, minutes, we have 3 sets of his minutes to accept this evening. 2 executive, one regular, and the first one is from April 2nd, 2019's meeting.
No.
For March 19th, I'm sorry,
March
I'm looking at the wrong date. March 19th, 2019. And the motion is that we move to accept and approve the meeting minutes of March 19th, 2019. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about those particular minutes? All right, all those in favor of accepting them? Okay. The next minutes are of an executive session that was held on March 5th, 2019. And the motion is that we move to approve the amended executive minutes of March 5th, 2019, but not release them at this time. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you.
I will be abstaining on this vote.
Okay. Were you here?
He wasn't present.
Okay. All right, so does anybody have any comments about those minutes? Executive session of March 5th. All those in favor? Thank you. 4, 0, 1. The second set of executive session minutes for an executive session that took place on March 19th, 2019. And the motion is to approve the amended executive minutes of March 19th, 2019, but not release them at this time. Give a second.
Second?
Anybody have any comments or concerns about the minutes of the March 19th? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. All right. Correspondence this week, there are 9, and a motion to move to accept and approve the 9 correspondences A through I as shown. Do a second.
Second?
Thank you. Discussion on the 9 items before us. So, I have one question, Greg. The item from the Coolidge School folks?
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, it's, it's kind of in a poster form?
Yeah.
Is that something that they're putting out, or they have put out, or they're,
They are putting it out.
yeah, so they are putting it out?
I've seen it in a couple places already.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if they were looking for us to say it's okay to put it out, or they're gonna put it out? They're putting it out.
Just correspondence, okay.
Sounds good.
It's a public meeting.
Okay, yeah, that was it for me.
Fantastic.
Anybody else have any questions or comments about the 9 correspondence items?
No?
Gentlemen?
Nope.
All those in favor? Thank you. Consent agenda is one item this week, and it's a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda item A as presented, which is a proclamation for Arbor Day. Do we have a second?
Second.
Arbor Day.
Anybody have any concerns about Arbor Day? All those in favor? All right, thank you. Okay. Item 5 is a special one-day permit for wine and malt.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
You're awful busy these days.
I am.
Got a lot going on. Okay. So this is for a motion. I'll read the motion and then we'll get into the, everything behind it. And it's a motion to accept and approve one-day wine and malt license at the Fine Arts Theater, 19 Summer Street, on Wednesday, May 1st, 2019, from 6 o'clock PM until 9 o'clock PM. Movie that night in theater number 3 is Frida Kahlo. This event is part of the Maynard Arts Week in Cinco de Mayo. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Okay, does, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but does anybody have any questions about this event?
saw that you're bringing your own tip certified employees, right?
Yes.
Great.
Could you introduce yourselves?
Oh, I'm sorry, my name's Catherine Delisle. I live at 100 Afton Street. And I'm representative of Fans of Film.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm
What did you say your name was?
Belisle, Belisle.
Okay,
And then, sorry.
okay, sorry.
I'm Alma Moreno, and I'm been doing the liquor, the one day serving sangrias.
My favorite actress is in it, I'm in. So, now are you guys gonna come back and do the, your usual thing for Cinco de Mayo? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so, will we have time to do that? At our next,
Either at the 16th, she's at the 16th
Yeah.
for another
Okay,
hearing.
okay.
She's a public
Oh, yeah.
hearing, yeah, that date's up.
okay, because I know we do it every year, and I didn't see it with this one, so,
Oh,
Just
okay.
checking.
We can see that, yeah.
okay. But, does anybody have any questions about this event? Is it, so it's with the Maynard Arts Week? All right. No questions?
No, it's great.
Seems like nobody has.
Selma Hayek is your favorite actress?
Not a bad-looking girl, that's all I can tell you. I'm shallow, what can I tell you? So, special wine permit, wine and malt, one-day permit, all those in favor? Great. All right, thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
Should be
Thank you
fun.
very much.
Jamie and Sarah.
All right. Okay. And this is just kind of a conversation.
Yes.
Well-
You want to start just introducing yourselves?
I'm Sarah Salamoni. We're the owners of Russell's Convenience Store.
Jamie Salamoni.
Okay.
I can explain a little, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Sorry. So we received correspondence from the attorneys representing this, just requesting that the town consider going through the process to petition the legislature, the state legislature, for called a home rule petition to gain additional full liquor license, package store license for the town of Maynard. Right now we have 3, and so Ms. Alvarez would like the selectmen to consider beginning the process to home rule petition for a 4th. We would have to go to town meeting.
I'm going to ask the question because I'm new. What is home rule?
Just home rule is just that it initiates from the homes, meaning from the municipality itself, as
Okay.
opposed to just being, like the process starts here. We ask the legislature.
Oh,
It's not a swift process. The last time we did a home rule petition, it took close to a year before we got the approvals back. It's just not something that the legislature is all that anxious to move along, it seems. Or maybe it depends on how big your city is, because Boston seems to get home rule petitions passed very quickly. But it's not a swift process based on what we saw the last time we did a home rule petition, but that was for, if I remember, that was for liquor store licenses, not,
6 restaurant licenses.
Restaurant
one
licenses.
Wine and malt
yeah.
restaurant.
So, okay.
Our understanding is that it's been over 30 years since a new full package license has been established in Maine, so significant changes in your census and population.
And I might say, the governor, a couple of years ago, proposed through his municipal, get what they called it, but basically Reorganization Act for municipalities. Part of his package was to, no pun intended, was to allow cities and towns unlimited right to decide how many liquor licenses that they have for their community. And I, quite frankly, support that because it gives communities an opportunity to decide their own future, they can grow as they want to, they can shrink as they want to, they can sort of control their own destiny in many ways, and they're not at the will of the legislature. It did not make it through. The bill didn't pass. That portion of it was removed. I would support it if it came up again, because I think cities and towns should have that flexibility to allow themselves to sort of control their own economic destiny.
So it would have to pass at town meeting, though, so the people would still have a say as to whether or not.
Which will not be till what, till fall, or,
No.
No,
or
we
is
can
it,
get
guess,
it on this
or we could do it on this one?
Get it in.
Becky's done a lot of
Oh,
letter
okay.
with town council to make sure we have the language right.
Okay.
So it's, but we won't pull that trigger unless y'all want us to put it on your warrant.
Is this gonna be next door?
Yeah,
No, wait, so. can I
Oh,
just back
no.
up? So they are requesting that the town consider an additional liquor store.
License.
Package license. Doesn't necessarily go to the ceremonies, although,
They're first in line right now.
yes, so just for clarity,
Oh,
If it went to
gotcha.
settlement,
sorry.
would,
would
It's
be in the
okay-
same,
It's okay.
same
are you
place.
planning on
If
expanding
it
over
would be
there?
planning
Yes.
to use it next door, just with the changing landscape of this area of downtown, coming up in Parker Street, thinking that there looks like there might be a possibility of one of the liquor licenses that's currently downtown moving up to the 29 Parker, kind of leaving potentially, less opportunity for our customers for a full package store at this area of town, so just to be able to offer that to our customers.
Okay, yes?
Presenters, speak closer to the microphone.
Sure.
They're not really much for amplification, they're more for just recording. So you're not gonna get a whole lot louder, so if you could speak a little louder? At least that's what they tell me. I don't know.
Could have all been a lot.
We've asked before, and that's what they tell me, so, yeah. Okay, so it's gonna be next door. And just if for curiosity's sake, what would happen to the rest of what's next door? Like all the groceries and stuff stay?
We would
Yeah.
still have that stay. Yeah, it would just be to be able to offer, right now, we only offer beer and wine, to be able to offer a full package. That would be the difference. So we would still offer beer and wine, and just would add the full package in addition.
All right. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Kind of know what home rule is, and then it would be, okay. So this will come up at the end of our discussion, really, when we get to the warrant items.
That's right, so we would accept it as another article.
Yeah, we would accept the article, and we can, you don't have to hang around if you don't want to, Becky let you know, but I don't know that anybody's, it doesn't seem as though anyone's, adverse to the idea at this point, but town meeting will decide, I guess, if we, once we just would accept the motion, and then that will go through the town meeting, and the town will decide, so.
Yeah, we just get started.
Yep,
Perfect.
Okay.
sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So I'm gonna hold that to the end. As a matter of fact, put it with this. Salary administration plan? Greg?
Wait,
Skipped one.
MEPC.
We skipped?
eight.
Oh, oh, yeah, MEP.
Letter.
Well, there's
Because
actually
you didn't
number
wanna talk
7.
about it.
Oh, I
Number
skipped
7.
it.
You don't want to deal with it, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, the delivery license, are we putting that off?
So if you want to, so the gentleman is not able to come this evening, so he can come on the 8th.
Yeah,
So it's up to- you
so we'll
want
just put that off to the 8th. So,
Yeah.
item number 7, for those who are interested, the application for a livery license. We're gonna move that to our meeting on May 8th because the gentleman requesting the license cannot make it this evening. And then number 8 is requests for Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We received a letter saying the current term for the member is up on April 5th. If anybody wants to arm wrestle for it, or anybody wants to leave it the way it is, speak now if you want to take that job.
I heard you're doing a fine job.
Yeah. You have to, well, the only tough part about it is you have to go and take the state ethics exam, so.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, we have to do that anyway, right?
No.
Oh, it's a different exam?
It's a totally different one than we take now. It's because you become an employee of the state of
Where you have
Massachusetts.
multiple
technically.
choice and you guess question A, and they said, no, not quite, and you
Yeah.
get B, no, not quite.
Buy your own Red Sox tickets and all that stuff, yeah.
Yes. yes.
Salary administration plan, sir.
I'd like to So she doesn't like coming up here, but this is, again, Stephanie Duggan, she's the Human Resources Coordinator. She's gonna explain the salary admin plan. Now, we're not doing significant changes to the salary admin plan. Therefore, the alterations that we're proposing would only need to be recorded in the town report.
All right, so it is something we have to vote on, so I will make the motion to accept the proposed amendments to the Town of Maynard Salary Administration Plan to become effective May 2nd, 2019. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
So mostly housekeeping.
Yes. So the salary administration plan applies to positions in the service of the town, full-time, part-time, temporary, seasonal, special, or other, except those filled by popular election under the direction and control of the school committee or encompassed in any official recognized labor union or association. So anybody that's in a union is included in this. This is for all those folks that aren't in a union. We've got about 48 employees that are covered by this right now. The biggest things that we're changing is basically little nuances to match better up with some of the union contracts that we currently have in place. So, for instance, Section 7 under benefits, holidays with pay. There's provided, however, that said time shall not be considered actual time work for the purpose of overtime calculation. That was something that legal wanted us to be put in there. Ensuring that paid holiday time cannot trigger overtime.
And overtime, right.
Just a stipulation. Half day on Christmas Eve, that is a union negotiated stipulation in a lot of most of the union contracts, so we put it in here as well. We're just trying to get that up to snuff. If an employee is out on a vacation or sick day, corresponding time off will be charged to paid time off when the building is closed for weather-related things. If somebody is out on a scheduled sick day or vacation day, that pay will be charged. It won't be considered a storm day like the rest of us. Vacations with pay, we're specifying fiscal year. That was a request from finance, just for budgeting purposes, that we know that anniversary allotments will be fiscally allotted for. And then we're adding a 200-hour vacation allotment for full-time staff reaching their 15th anniversary, again, in line with union contracts. The salary table, the only thing changing in the salary table, as far as ranges goes, is the $12 per hour to be competitive with mass minimum wage. We're also putting in there that not less than federal minimum wage, only because if we do need to lower it for whatever crazy reason at some time, we have the ability to do that. We're not tied to the state minimum wage, we're tied to the federal minimum wage, which is always less. But we want to be competitive, so we're putting it up to 12.
Okay.
And this will become effective 30 days from today.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Stephanie?
Well, doesn't the salary administration plan have to be approved at town meeting?
No.
Oh, I thought it did.
In the last paragraph of Stephanie's memo, it clarifies. In the event, however, that the town administrator classifies a new position under the plan, the decision will be subject to ratification at town meeting. So we're just not adding anybody new.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Stephanie?
Thank you for highlighting the changes too.
Yeah,
Made it much
that
easier.
helps.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. I thought that helped. Helps me too.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all those in favor of accepting the salary administration plan?
Thank you.
You?
Staff thanks you.
Thank you.
Excellent,
I'm your
excellent.
full-time person.
School committee budget discussion? Could you pass that to Miss Becky?
Oh, I'll pass it to her.
Is this a discussion? Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm sure all those in the room know who you are, but could you just introduce yourselves for those watching across the country?
Dawn Capello from the Maynard School Committee.
Bob Drury, superintendent.
Okay. So, I guess you guys are here to talk about the budget. And the budget information and, maybe some other questions will be asked. But we'll start with the budget. How's that?
Which budget?
The operating
The school
budget
budget.
or the school?
Or the reserve?
Well, let's just talk about first the the usual school budget that we're all, where we're at with that, so everyone
Oh,
knows.
sure,
Because we
we can definitely do that.
we have a pretty good idea, but just to hear from you guys helps, so we know where we are with the budget itself, and then we'll get into the second piece, which is the budget that surrounds the issues with Green Meadow and all those other issues that
Sure.
exist.
In terms of the operating budget, it's actually one of our better years in recent memory. I think a lot of that comes from the tri-board meetings we've had all year with 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 2 members of the school committee, and 2 members of the finance committee, Greg Johnson, Mike Guzzo, Michelle Resendez, and a cast of special guests along the way. So we went into the February meeting asking for a level service budget, but we knew in advance of the meeting, which was a nice change, that we were getting very close to that, but we were $100,000 less than level funded. Level service. So that's actually, compared to prior years, we've had deficits of 600,000, so in terms of 100,000, that will hurt. We'll make a few cuts, but it's still the best it's been in a long time, which is kind of nice. So we will be looking at not filling a couple of positions, a paraprofessional, a special educator that's retiring. And the biggest one would be to take the new strings program, which is very popular, and make it either a before or after school program and shift that position. So we'll save 1 full-time salary by reorganizing the music department. So we'll go from 3 full-time
Okay.
music teachers across the district to 2. And then go to a
Couple
band.
efficiencies.
And some other small efficiencies as well, so. And I'm happy to send those along if you haven't seen them yet.
I got a question on that if I could, and this is just because I've heard from some parents on the strings issue. Namely, the first thing is that some are concerned, and I don't know the answer to it, but some are concerned that because this year it was a class-based or a curriculum-based, if you want to call it that, and some people invested in instruments, and now if it becomes an after-school program, the people that invested in the instruments may, in some instances, if they purchase them, lose that because their kid may not be able to participate. And then the second question I've been asked is, will there be a charge for an after-school program like it is for athletics, where there's a what is it called, fee, whatever fee, and does that put an additional burden on those parents who thought that they were, doing the best for their kid by purchasing a string instrument and now learning that the program's been changed?
So similar to the way chorus has always been at the high school, it's still a school course, so it will still be a school course. It won't be
No
activity
fee.
No additional cost. As far as purchasing, most of our families rented. We had a rental night, so I wasn't aware that that was a concern.
Yeah. I'm not aware how many parents have done it. I was just asked for general questions that people who purchase or invest in instruments, and then the other question you've answered is the fee.
It's still considered a course. It won't be a fee for it. It's not like an after-school activity. It'll be considered a course.
Okay.
What are the, so what type of activities, educators, what cuts have the budget led to this year that are significant that we all should know about?
So we're going to reorganize the music department from 3 full-time to 2 full-time. Move the strings program to either before or after school, so that'll save 1 full-time salary. And then we will not backfill paraprofessional.
There was a paraprofessional position. Actually, there was 2, but those fluctuate. But we believe that there's not a need for at least 1, so we're not going to backfill that one. The special education cut did not occur. There was the other occurrences were just smaller efficiencies. We looked at actually saving money because we were using consulting fees to do some of the DOT.
Yeah, so the occupational therapy is going to increase to a 0.7, and that will reduce outside consultant costs, so that'll save $22,911. We're going to rent out 2 rooms in Fowler. We have 2 extra classrooms right now. We'll rent those out to the Case Collaborative Program. That'll bring in, so that's a revenue choice. We'll be bringing in $15,000, and due to the reduced needs in terms of the kids on IEPs, that goes up and down, as you all know. We will not have to backfill. That's the special education paraprofessional. That'll save $16,000, and the music reallocation, will save $50,000. So that's four changes for a total savings of $100,000.
And we chose that, the leadership team got together and looked at anything that we could do through attrition so that we wouldn't have to lay off staff. And we had a resignation mid-year in the music program, so that's why we wouldn't have to lay off any of our current staff. So that's why we chose that one.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions related specifically to the operational budget? Okay, so this afternoon I got an email from a parent, asked me to read or enter something into the record, and so I got Becky make us copies. There's a copy for each of us. Copy for Greg. Did you give them one? Yeah. And you have one for there. So anyways, this is just going in. We're not going to read it. It's just going to be entered into the record. So that's where it's going to go. I don't think we need to read it, but there's just some questions based on, I guess it's questions based on, it says, the email says it was questions based on your discussion from last Monday night with the Finance Committee. So just some other questions that came up. Naturally, most of us are all getting the same sets of questions every week. And so I guess, can you give us an update on, because we weren't all at last Monday's meeting, and we kind of have a different audience than the FinCom typically. So can we just get the update as best you can on where we are at with everything going on in the Green Meadow in regards to the issues with mold and asbestos and all of the other things going on. And then we'll, at the end, we'll talk about the, kind of talk about the dollars and cents of that whole issue and how we're going to approach that and
Sure.
that whole conversation.
I will give sort of a 50,000-foot view and then let you folks lead your way with questions, because I don't know how closely you followed any of this or attended meetings or watched some of the broadcasts, so I don't want to waste anyone's time. And just keep in mind that we're kind of in this every day, so any questions are good questions. So last fall, we had folks, specifically staff member, being concerned about mold. So that's sort of how all of this started. We brought in all the appropriate state agencies. Aaron and his team have been amazing. Tim Goulding, they're right now, operating as our facilities department. While the decision-making rests with the school committee and the superintendent's office, they provide us really the expertise that we know. They know who to call in. They know how to follow all of the instructions from the state level. So we had the Department of Public Health come in and look at that and make recommendations, kind of fast forwarding into, the result was that the mold findings, all the testing on the mold showed that the few places in the school that showed quote unquote a higher level of mold, it was the same level of mold as the outdoors, and that corresponded to the classrooms and spaces in the school where the doors were often left open, due to probably valid reasons, which I can go into if that's important. But basically, if anyone's familiar with the pre-K and the K wing, those doors are routinely open to the outside, so we're not surprised that they have the same mold scores as outdoors, although a lot of us had never even known anything about this till this all happened. We started learning about it. The other room that is exposed to the outdoors a lot is the professional development room, which became the wellness room, which is now functioning as a pre-K classroom due to everything being moved around. So at the end of the day, the mold that was found was not toxic mold, but what it was the same level of and the same type of mold that can be found outdoors. So it was good to get the answers on the mold not being, it is a concern, and we took the concern very seriously, but at the end of the day, luckily it wasn't a dangerous situation. Come January, we had employees bring up concerns in the same wing about asbestos. What really kicked that off was there was about a 1-inch piece of ceiling tile that, when it became wet, fell to the ground. and there were some concerns about making sure that we have the appropriate training, the appropriate folks to dispose of that safely. And the staff were concerned, because I don't think a lot of us knew much about asbestos and mold. You know, was that a contamination? Was that dangerous to breathe in? And I've since learned, and a lot of us have learned, that asbestos is in many old buildings, ceiling tiles, and the dangerousness of asbestos is when it becomes ground up into a fine dust and breathed in. So luckily we weren't in that situation, but that was right about when things started to really ramp up. Aaron was great, and he brought in the insurance company, and they took a look at all of the leaks that were contributing to the wet ceiling tiles. If you've ever had ceiling tiles in your home and they get those brown spots, Aaron was great, and he got the insurance company to come through with an insurance claim on that repair. That repair is going to be starting over the summer. Once the public and sort of the media attention kind of hit with all of this, the Department of Public Health and the Department of Labor Services, which oversees the OSHA standards, came on site at our recommendation, and they also recommended that anything in that wing that we wanted to quote-unquote keep would have to go through a very serious decontamination process, just because of the chance of contamination. So that ended up being really the most expensive part of the whole project. So we had many meetings with all the stakeholders and talking about what did it make sense to quote-unquote clean and save, because it was a very expensive, time-consuming process that had to be done by licensed abatement officials. So we drew the line at furniture and computers. So we saved all of that, and we paid to have all of that decontaminated, but we were not able to save curriculum materials. Every page of every book, every little dinosaur, every little handheld manipulative would have had to been cleaned, really with a very industrial wipe type situation. It would have been astronomically expensive. So that's probably where you started to see things like fundraisers and folks trying to replace classroom supplies. And I have all that. I have quite a bit of it detailed in the cost spreadsheet that I've shared with the board. So at that point, that covers sort of phase 1 and phase 2 of the project. So phase 1 also included the hallway next to the cafeteria. There were concerns by a staff member raised at a meeting about the tiles not being up to snuff next to the cafeteria and the music room. So phase 1 underwent some testing and replacement of ceiling tiles. It was about $16,000, really a small amount given how large the bill for this project grew. Phase 2, which was decontamination of the closed wing that I spoke about, is $261,000. And then phase 3, just want to make sure I get them all right, which will be the actual abatement of the two, the pre-K and the K asbestos ceiling tiles, actually starts April 2nd, which I think is tonight. That's a 3-week process, and that is the one part of the project that will be covered by insurance, which is about $180,000. Prior to reopening at the end of August, early September, we will do some other things since the wing is empty. We're calling it phase 4, but that's just so we can all keep all the parts of the project straight in our head. It's going to be installation of ceiling grid and lights, because each ceiling is now going to have different configurations, so we can't keep the old grid and lighting systems. And we'll also do some small things like repainting the whole wing, deep clean, because the wing is never empty. It's never without children. We run summer programs. We run the school through there all year long. And we'll also, I don't know if you've ever been in the pre-K wing, there are these very small, very old and rusty kitchenettes that must come out. When I saw that they existed, because we didn't attend preschool here, so this was news to me, they must come out. They are not what we need to be having in our classrooms. So that'll be another thing that we do. So phase 4 is a lot of sort of cosmetic things. And that's sort of where we're at right now. So phase 3 starts tonight for 3 weeks. That wing is completely sealed off in every way you can imagine, so there's no danger to the students or the staff. And that's sort of where we're at. So sorry, that might have been more detailed than I promised.
I think I would add just that phase 4 is going to be coming out of the school department budget, whether it's the facility rental.
Yeah.
So we're not asking for anything from phase 4. We're just asking for up to the abatement.
Phase 4 we're trying to cover, and we should be able to cover with facility rental fees. And we're gonna try to work with Assabet Valley to get some of the kids in to help us with some of the work over the summer once it's an environment that they could work in. So that might be a really nice example of the partnership we have with Assabet Valley.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I got a comment as opposed to a question. So from the process that you guys experience now, hopefully there's lessons learned, and I hate looking back, but sometimes it's always good to look back so you don't repeat the same mistakes going forward. So you did an assessment, you're hoping to know exactly what took place and what were the steps that you probably could have taken to avoid the position you're in right now?
I can speak to that a little bit if you like.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, right off the bat, it became very obvious that we don't have a very good, and I take full responsibility for this, we don't have a very good memorandum of agreement or understanding between the town and schools for facilities. And I remember when we merged, I vaguely remember merging them under the previous administration and I'm sure a previous board. But we merged facilities within the town and schools as a money-saving measure one budget year. That doesn't probably shock anyone. But really, I don't think what was ever done is just a really explicit list of who's doing what and who's making what decisions. So that, I think, just became really apparent. And it's been great because I think everyone's really worked well together. But it's just because of that goodwill, I think, that we're getting through this. So one of the things that we're taking on as either a spring or a summer project is to have our administrators work on an MOU to bring to both boards. And if both boards agree that this is the way to move forward, then we will vote and we will move forward that way. If we think it's better to get a divorce, which I don't, just to make light of it a little bit, then we'll go that way. There are towns that do it with one person with that knowledge that can kind of oversee all the buildings, and there are towns that just split it completely. So we'll do some research on that and decide what's the right thing to suggest for Maynard's, and our boards will weigh in as it should be. So lack of a clear MOU, in my opinion, is not helping. I don't think we've had proper training for our teachers or our custodians in some respects. I think that we can really provide better training. So that's not meant to blame anyone. That's really meant to be saying we should do a better job. If the teachers don't know what they don't know about their classroom, they're going to open the door and the window and the vent and this and that. So I just think we could do a really much better job with the training, and I think we're also, this was already happening, but we're going to be implementing an online issue reporting tool. So that was already planned. It's a September rollout. So hopefully nothing this summer puts that further out, but I think that'll be great. If you're a teacher and you think you have an issue, you can log in, you can log your issue, and now we have a whole set of when was it reported, what were the steps taken, and we'll get a lot of really good data. Do we have enough people? Do we have the training? How long does it take to resolve an issue? And the staff member will be able to sort of track their issue resolution as well. So I think the old way of reporting was, the teacher who's so busy is probably saying in the hallway to the principal, hey, check my room for this. And I think that probably worked 50 years ago in Maynard, I don't know, or other places, but there's a lot of really great non-expensive tools we can use to make this a much tighter system. So looking at the training, using the online tool, making sure everyone knows who's responsible for what so everyone can be held accountable. And then the last one, and I don't know the details yet, but I know it's been recommended either by Aaron or Michelle that we bring on a third-party environmental consultant on an ongoing basis. So we don't leave to chance any sort of asbestos review process. It's a very regulated part of the state. I learned about it for the first time, unfortunately. I take full responsibility for that. But we will make sure we nail that going forward. So that's a very important part of building maintenance that we need to take more seriously.
If I could just sort of piggyback on that portion of the conversation, I want to talk about a little bit of history because going back, I don't think there's ever been a time, and somewhere it must have been lost, but I don't think there's ever been a time where the town believed that it had any responsibility over what decisions were made for the facilities of the school department. The history story is when we first developed the position of the facilities manager. Don, I don't know what role you were in at the time, but the way it was financed to emphasize the fact that all of these parties had a role in what the facilities manager was doing 1/3 of the position was funded from the school budget, 1/3 of the position was funded from the town budget, and 1/3 of the position was funded from the enterprise fund for water and sewer. The understanding was, because this individual was going to be responsible for watching over and making recommendations to, and that's the key, to the leadership or the director of each of those departments. So that position was responsible for speaking to town hall about, hey, you know, you need this. The library might need that. The police department might need that. In addition to department heads themselves were speaking with the facilities manager. Likewise, the schools had that responsibility. It was not ever expected that the facilities manager would have any control over the schools, because the town doesn't have any control over the school budget. The school budget is the school budget. And thirdly, the same with the enterprise fund relative to water and sewer infrastructure, et cetera. Interestingly, and this is sort of an aside, but the second year, the schools said, we can't afford to pay our 1/3 of the facilities manager, and the town, as it usually does, stepped up and said, give it on us. So we took the hit on our budget of that 1/3. And then and I don't know if any longer, if 1/3 of it comes from from
Mike's shaking his head.
from water and sewer now, and so it all comes from the town, when it was supposed to be 1/3. So that's one frustration that has developed over time with this position. But the real point is that the facilities manager has no budget himself, or, you know, herself, whoever it happens to be. So they can make recommendations, but the decision-making is the school committee's decision-making, not the town's. So to your point, Don, yes, there's an educational issue there, but somewhere along the way, that understanding was lost. I don't think it was lost on the town side, but I do think it might have been lost on the school side. And when your budget is presented to you, part of that budget, as it is with the fire department, I only say the fire department because the chief's right between the two of you as I look out, but the fire department, the library, the town hall, the police department, the Council on Aging, their budget funds their building issues. That's part of their budget requests every year. I think that's been lost. And I think what's happened is the school department in particular, and I'm not picking on the school department, but the school department in particular has relied on the town to do its bidding on buildings. And that's where the frustration, as I sit on this side of the table, that's where the frustration comes in. And then the real one that hits home for me, and I realized that at the time it was a desire, but, you know, you ask for the board's assistance and direction and whatever, and as I was looking back over the history of what's gone on over the last several years with the school and Green Meadow in particular, I went back to a meeting of November 1st, 2016. And at that meeting, you guys, the school department, came in front of us about the new playground at Green Meadow. $700,000 project for a new playground at Green Meadow. And you can see clearly in the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from that meeting, and I remember the meeting clearly, and I'm sure Chris does too, as he sat here with us. We made it clear that we thought you had other priorities, namely the roof. And it's even in the minutes. And it's so frustrating that here we are now 3 years later, the roof never was addressed because now it's caused additional problems. And we've got a playground, from what I understand, continues to flood. And that was the issue, not only access, but flooding. So we've made mistakes, and our advice was ignored, or at least we went to town meeting and then we needed more money for the playground. So that's frustrating. And so I hope that we did, as Armin said, we learned from this, and that going forward that, you know, we're not just looking to cause problems for the schools and to block things that the schools might want, and the playground's a wonderful thing if that's the top priority. And I remind you, a question was asked at that town meeting, are you sure this is your top priority? And the answer was yes. And I think we knew otherwise, and that's frustrating.
That's it.
That's it.
Drink time. Have a water, you must be parched. All right, so, anybody else?
I actually just have one clarifying question on the Green Meadow Futures website. You have the known costs and estimates as of 3/25/19. And one of the things, it says the total is 789, 552.55. Net costs after insurance reimbursement is 609, 552.55. But 100,000-ish is that phase 4, I believe. So I'm just wondering, so I don't mind, I realize that there is an amount that is needed and there's an amount that's needed to be paid. So transferring money to the reserve fund. But my hope is maybe it's not that 609,000 number and it's more closer to a $500,000 number. I mean, I don't mind transferring it and then taking it back, which is
Yeah,
phenomenal,
no.
but that's, yeah.
Yeah, so this is an evolving spreadsheet, obviously, Selectwomen. The number needed at this point is 550,000, so.
550? Thanks.
Yeah. And that doesn't include, I've been speaking with Kate Hogan to try to get a small amount of that covered in the state budget. So we can't promise, we can't, we've put in the request as of 7 a.m. this morning, and we'll watch the budget process.
Okay.
But to your point, obviously anything we don't need, we are happy to let sit in whichever fund we decide to put towards this. Similarly, we are under the impression that we will have very good news on the fines imposed by the state. So when I come up with the 550,000, I am including the fact that I am led to believe we will have very good news on that this week.
Okay, all right.
If we
But
do not,
currently
my
that
number will be
does-
600, but I believe, I'm strong enough to say that I believe that the fines will be waived.
Okay, so it would be, so
So it's
does
still
that
550.
550? Okay, all right.
Yep, sorry, so if I don't get the good news that we're expecting, then it'll
It'll
be
be
closer to
600.
600.
Okay.
Do we have the same understanding on the town side?
He doesn't want to say.
If you don't want to say, that's
We're
fine.
cautioned to say that.
He doesn't, he holds it.
Till everything is signed and sealed and delivered, everyone's very cautious.
Yeah.
That's
Don't
understandable.
ask, don't put him on the spot.
Yes.
We're just waiting for all,
So-
we're waiting for signatures.
I am encouraged.
Cautiously optimistic. How's that?
Encouraged, that works. I'll take
Okay.
that.
Anything else? So, we talked about it, you talked about the beginning of your comments about, budget, and the budget group, the three groups. And, that's new, that's fairly new, but people should know that that's happening, that 5 years ago, there was no budget subcommittee, there was no cooperation, there was no communication, basically, between the FinCom, the schools, and the Board of Selectmen, and we started that. I think we started that, yourself and I, Dr. Girardi and Kevin Sweet, a few years back, and it's been a great addition to the budget process in the town. I should thank, Ken Estabrook and the Finance Committee for the, their work in last week, and kind of takes us out of having to get into some of the other things and some of the, basically what some might call the unpleasant pieces of the whole thing that were kind of talked about last week. And, we're not here to place blame, they're not here to place blame, but I think, we're talking about an MOU, we're talking about training, and we're talking about, plans going forward. And the biggest problem is accountability. And it's tough to have accountability when any one of us, for, personal reasons or reasons of elections and everything else, these seats change and the people in them change. So it becomes more, it becomes difficult. And although some people might appreciate hearing somebody have to take blame and say it's my fault and raise their hand and take blame, it's not really about that. It's how do we fix it going forward. And so, while some appreciate it, and I appreciate hearing it, it doesn't really do anything other than say, I take the blame. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't go back and fix anything. But, as we move forward, I honestly think that these type of things, these reports and these type of things that
Should be taken
lead to these
seriously.
things, they have to be in the hands of an employee of the town of Maynard, of the school system, whether it's police, fire, whether it's in this building, elected volunteer public servants should not be charged and not be held responsible to have those things in their hands and make the decisions. We're not trained in it, we're not educated in it, we don't have backgrounds in it for the most part. Those things should be in the hands of somebody who came to us with a resume, they did an interview, they went through the process, and they hold themselves out to be an expert in those fields. That's their job. It's not our job. Our job is to deal with it as it comes to us, like the budget. The budget, for an analogy for us, is it's kind of like a hot air balloon. We kind of fill it, and we give it to you, and then it just goes, and we don't know what happens to it. You know, in that sense, just goes up into the sky. We don't have any more say over it because of, you know, the town charter, Mass General Law, and all those things. We don't have any right to tell you how to spend that money. We don't have any right to tell you how to direct your people, and we certainly wouldn't be presumptuous enough to sit up here and tell you how to do those things. But it is something that concerns the whole community, and all of us have received emails and phone calls and, you know, with the letter you guys have tonight that we got, and we just continue to get those things, and it's, you know, it's not, I've talked to Justin, I've talked to Don, I've talked to everybody involved a ton of times in the past few months, you know, supporting you guys, and we continue to support you, but we're just looking to find out, you know, going forward, we need to have accountability, not accountability, yeah, you guys answer at the end of the day, the school committee's responsible, but we don't have the expertise to handle an AHERA report. We don't have the expertise to know what mold is in the building, what mold isn't in the building, what's inside, what's outside. You know, what does, like to Ken's point, Ken knows a lot more about asbestos now than he ever wanted to, and so do the rest of us. But it's an issue that, we don't have the expertise. We have the expertise in the experience to deal with the problem once it occurs, but we don't have the expertise to get us away from ever having the problem occur. So those are just my comments, but along those lines, I've suggested to Greg, and we've talked about it, and I've talked about it to a few other people, that, you know, in this town, we're such a small town, that when we have a crisis, whether it's a water pump, a well goes down, or anything else, you know, it's a crisis. So when our wells go down, it's a crisis. When we have a problem like this in the school, it's a crisis. We don't deal with crises very well. So I have suggested to Greg that we form a group that includes police, fire, schools, FinCom, Selectmen, Town Hall, and different people, a crisis group. So when one of these things occur, nobody's on the outside looking in. We're sitting in a room together. And it means, you know, if it means that you have to have your phone on 24 hours a day in case something happens in a school overnight, or something happens, you know, a fire downtown, or any number of things could trigger it, but something to trigger a true crisis, that we're all together in the same room, working on these decisions together, and you brainstorm and you figure out how to get over it before it gets on top of us as a town and as a community and as the citizens, because they're worried too. I mean, everybody worries. It doesn't take long for a crisis to hit this town and go from house to house, and everybody knows within a day, no matter what it is. So I just think we need to, you know, this is a crisis. It's, you know, it is what it is. It's you know, on the way to being repaired. There's a lot of people that will take a lot of joy in finger pointing and everything else. I don't think that the five of us are that group. It's not our responsibility in that sense. But I think going forward as a community, all of us, you know, the Selectmen, the FinCom, Town Hall, DPW, everybody has some responsibility in a crisis when it occurs in this town, because we are so small that everyone gets involved, that we should have some way of dealing with them much better than the way we've dealt. And it's not a criticism, by the way, because when we have crises up here, we handle it much the same way and face the same criticisms from people sitting in the room. So just some mechanism, so that when something happens in town, we're all together, we're all sitting down in the same room, talking about what it is. And, you know, hey, I don't know, I might have an idea that you know, Chief Stowers says, no, Chris, that's not how we did it. We saw this in some town I was in New Hampshire, we gotta do it this way. Or, you know, Mark Dubois is gonna tell us something else, or Aaron's gonna have an idea. So I just think we need to, you know, handle it more as a larger community, a larger group, and move forward with these issues. And hopefully, you know, that works for us. So hopefully we don't have any more of these things, you know, as we learn and go forward. But, you know, we appreciate it. We know the effort that goes into it, and it's hard to, you know, not be criticized. It's hard to not be second-guessed, but, you know, that's just human nature, and we kind of sign up for it when we sit up here or we sit at the school committee. But, you know, going forward, we are here. We've said it. We keep saying it. We're here to support you guys as much as we can, and if we can create a way to everybody supports one another when one of these things happen, all the better for the town. So.
A lot of it comes down to just communication and
Collaboration.
In the era of social media, in a town of our size, you know, things can get out of control and out of hand very, very quickly. And so Chris's suggestion, which might alleviate some of that problem by allowing us to be able to get a consistent message. You know, one of the things on this issue, as time was going on, Yeah, I was hearing a lot, as Chris says, from various people asking questions or whatever, but I literally knew nothing. And as an elected official in the community, that seemed a little odd, but I didn't know anything. It had not been shared with us, some of the details relative to what was going on, all of the details really, as to what was moving. And I know it was it was fluid. I've heard that, you guys talk about that a number of times, that it was changing rapidly. But I think there was a little bit, if we have to learn from it and do an autopsy on it, there was some communication gaps that could have been filled, that not only with us and the school committee, but, because we're in many ways the voice of the community. The community comes to us on every issue, and I didn't feel at times that I really understood what was going on. I knew what I knew, and sometimes what I knew was wrong. So that's
good feedback from staff.
Okay. Now, we done with them?
No.
No.
One more thing.
One more thing, are we gonna talk about the money and what we're gonna do with the money?
That would be.
Or are we gonna do that at the end?
It's up to you, I can
We'll
explain
do
now
it
if
at the end.
you like, but while they're here.
Yeah, let's talk about the money piece.
So, this is only a recommendation. It's similar to what has been proposed in the past. Some of the figures have changed to a degree. So now that we have more developed costs, as Ms. Capo referred to, that we have, whether it be $600,000, that was about $610,000. That's what we're trying to budget for, so to speak. And the approach of putting it into the reserve account, as Selectman St. John alluded to, seems like a good methodology still. So that's reflected in the free cash allocation recommendations that's in your packet towards the town meeting articles. And so that $610,000 would be in addition to the $250,000 already requested to be appropriated for the reserve fund. And again, it would the determination through an application for a reserve fund transfer to the finance committee to be that oversight, so to speak, for the use of those funds. So my recommendation to the finance committee would be to be thorough, as they always are, to look at the bills and the scope of work that's being planned for by the school committee and the school department for Green Meadow remediation, and then approve those transfers accordingly. I think I'm highly encouraged, as I have been for the many months I've been working with the finance committee, but in particular, in reflection of the questions that were asked and the deliberation that occurred at not last night's, but the finance committee meetings before, where the school committee.
Does that suggest that last night's meetings, the questions weren't good?
It was last night.
Wow.
Well,
You can ask the chairman.
hash that out with Ken when we're done.
I meant that from what I was.
I
referring to.
understood.
It was very
So-
thorough. Yeah.
It was
It's
thorough.
very thorough.
It
And
was.
so I think it's still my strong recommendation to go through that route. Although, again, it's for the approval of the selectmen to have that allocated and then go to town meeting. And town meeting would approve that appropriation and that methodology. There are not a lot of alternatives to that, but there are some. You could keep that money all in the stabilization accounts as it was originally allocated for, although it would have to go to town meeting to appropriate that out of those accounts.
Okay. But the number is 610,000,
That's what I had.
over and above the 250, which is the typical allocation.
That's right, because I don't
So
want
the-
to touch that.
So the full allocation that's gonna be 860,000
Yes.
for the full.
But the 250,000 is coming out of our general operating
Yes.
budget, and the 600,000 is coming out of.
It's needed.
Yeah,
Two fifty
yeah.
is like our safety net, right? Like our usual.
And the schools. I mean, we regularly have reserve fund transfers. But yeah, so I don't want to touch
That's
that.
like our standard, like.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I don't want to touch that. But the 610 would be efficient.
So is this a discussion on the article that's going to be coming up later on? So we're sort of having it out of order in some ways.
That's right, it's part of the, because I made some
As-
adjustments. But
Yeah, and as I expressed at our last meeting, the concern I have is not in no way the finance committee. I have no issues with the Finance Committee. The concern is the relative to the amount of money that is going outside of the hands of the elected officials. That was my comment at the last meeting. Is there, by putting this money into the, and perhaps you said this and I missed the point, but if you put this $650 additional $1,000 into the reserve fund, is it specifically targeted for those repairs? Or could it be used for additional repairs outside of what we're talking about? Say a bill comes in and it's less than $650 total, and now you've got an additional $100,000 hanging around. Could that money then be used? In other words, are we giving up authority over additional funds that are not going specifically to pay for the school roof?
Are the selectmen, is the body itself?
Is this body or town meeting? Is town meeting turning over to the Finance Committee
Yeah.
additional taxpayer funds that could be used for something other than the school roof?
So let me explain the methodology a little bit and see if maybe
Hey,
this will answer your question.
Wait a second, I just want to be clear. You're talking once it goes.
Once it goes, yeah.
So-
Or is it targeted specifically when it goes into that reserve fund?
Yeah.
Is it, here's a pocket of money inside the reserve fund? You've got your 250 that they get every year.
Yep.
Here's 650 that's specifically for the repairs of the school. You guys are the checks and balances to make sure that it gets approved
Spent
properly.
properly.
Or could they then take that additional money and say, oh, you know what? There was a problem with the fire department. Let's give part of that 650 to the fire department. Oh, there was this. So in effect, the reserve fund does indeed grow beyond the 250 that
So, okay, so, I think the short answer is no, but let me go through it in a bit, because I think you're gonna, I think you'll understand.
if you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes, I do, so let me explain. So, Finance Director Mike Guzzo has already, wherever he went.
Behind there. Hiding.
So he already made an account for Green Meadow, what do we call it? Green Meadow remediation. Okay, so not fire station, not anything else. Green Meadow remediation, and specifically remediation as it's understood for that particular old wing. So when that reserve fund account goes to the reserve fund account, it's actually, there's a sub account within that that has its own series of numbers that is just for Green Meadow remediation.
So it becomes restricted funds.
Well, yeah, but let me, there's checks and balances. So that $610,000 would go into that. And then,
Goes into where? Into that account?
That account that was
it's a
created.
sub-account of the reserve fund.
But that makes it sound like it is targeted then.
It's targeted.
Specific, that
so
can't be spent on anything other than Green
Right,
Meadow.
but I'm explaining the checks to make sure it's not too. So when the school committee has bills for whatever this remediation is, but if for some reason they accidentally slip in a bill that has something to do with another wing or something like that, well, it would get caught because those copies of those bills would have to go to the finance committee. The finance committee would review all those bills to make sure that they match the account, the reserve and transfer application that they requested for. But it still can't go anywhere, because even once the finance committee, if they were to approve that amount, then it has to go back to town hall, because the finance team here, specifically the treasurer, we got Kevin Peterson actually paying the bills. He double checks to make sure that all the bills going out the door match. He double checks all the, and then it all zeroes it out and whatnot. So
Yeah, and
if he were to catch a bill that didn't have anything to do with that particular sub-account of the reserve fund, he wouldn't pay it.
And my concern is not that I anticipate, because I don't, that the school would try to slip something in. That's not my concern.
No, no.
It's strictly the authority of the elected officials to have control over where the money is spent versus the finance committee, which is appointed.
No,
And
fair.
that's the concern. And, I've heard from residents that I don't want non-elected officials to have control over money, but if it avoids town meeting costs, which is, I know it does
Yeah.
through this process, that's one thing.
Yeah.
And if it expedites the payments that we know are going to have to be paid anyway,
Yeah.
that's another thing. But the concern would be if the funding could then be used, say, for example, the fire chief says, oh, I've got a problem with such and such. I didn't have it built into my budget. It's an unexpected expense. I need it. And now instead of just having 250 in our it sort of loses some of the control over the fiscal responsibility of the department heads, if they know that there's additional money that otherwise wouldn't have been in the reserve fund. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do, but I have more confidence in the system that that just wouldn't happen. You know, whether it be from the finance committee making sure that only those funds are used for what is appropriated for by town meeting. The town meeting will go into this vote with the understanding that certain amount of money will be used for this particular project. And so then they would trust then the process beyond that's what they appropriated, that's what we use it for, similar to the rest of the budget. And then, right, I have enough confidence in the system and the fact that you know, the finance committee is appointed by the elected town moderator, so they themselves are not being elected, which is kind of the root of your point. But the town had appropriated it. The town moderator has been elected. The school committee originates those bills, so to speak. They've been elected. So I don't think it's as removed from the elected officials. This particular body, yes, it
But
has
the-
been
I-
separated from it to a degree.
Let me see if I can go at it from a different perspective. The underlying 650 or whatever, 610, whatever the number is that targeted funds? Or is that,
Yeah.
yes or no?
Yes.
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 Okay, so it only can be spent on the approval of the finance committee for targeted issues relative to the roof at Green Meadow.
Yes, even the auditor would catch us if we tried to pay for anything else out of something that's been titled Green Meadow Aviation from our sub-account. Like,
Okay.
You have to take my word for it.
No, that's my issue, because I like the idea of having somebody being able to check the bills, which is what the finance committee will do, and check to make sure that it's necessary and that it's reasonable and there's no. But I don't want then there to be, oh, we only spent $450, great job, we saved it. Now we have another, and it's not the finance committee that's doing this, it's the rest of the town says, oh, we have more money, we can sort of be wasteful with our money because we know it, that the finance committee has.
So the town would not do that. The town would, I wouldn't even be able to reappropriate that money anyways. So if they only spend 450 or whatever of the 610, the rest of it goes back to free cash, and then I have to come back to the budget and have it reappropriated.
Does it automatically go back to free cash, or does it have
Yeah, I
to go
was just
through a
gonna
town
ask the
meeting?
same question.
I don't know.
Pretty sure.
Is that the
I
same?
have to ask
Yeah.
Mike?
Ma-
Mike, real quick, if any amount of the money is not used, right, but when?
And how?
Yeah,
When and
how quickly does that happen?
Like, does it can we automatically
automatic?
just move the money, or does it have to go through like a town?
It goes, at the end of the fiscal year, anything that's not spent, as it is
gotcha.
with
So it
anything
goes
that's
right- okay.
that's in the reserve fund, reverts to free
We have
cash.
a reserve fund now, right?
Okay.
We have 250, if you didn't use one single penny of it, like in the past, because of how we now use,
Yeah.
budget shortfalls, that money automatically flows into free cash. The deal is though, free cash as of June 30th is zero. It does not carry over.
Okay.
19 or 20?
Whatever we have now. So in other words, we have say 2.1 million. I think we didn't use one single penny of it. Your free cash as of July 1st, for FY for this year is zero until I submit it.
So, I don't suspect to use the full $250,000 of this year's reserve fund. We're up to.
Yeah, right now, what we've done is, before we even did this, we sat with the FinCom, went through what we felt we needed out of the 250 from our end in terms of different pieces. But the intent was never from the beginning to use any of that money for this.
Yeah, two separate.
It was not. We're basically considering it separate.
It's not straightforward, Selectman Gavin. I don't mean to sound like.
What's that?
This
Did
is.
you want to speak? I didn't
I
know why
wanna
you moved.
clarify.
I didn't know why you moved from there to
He said he wants to clarify, he said, he wants to clarify.
Well,
Please,
if you want to, yeah.
I want to,
Waiting for the chair to tell me it's okay.
No, I'm ready, yeah.
All right.
I knew you didn't move just for fun, so.
All right, Ken Estabrook, Chair of the Finance Committee. So we've had discussions at the Finance Committee as well as with the Town Administrator and Finance Director. So we're going to follow our reserve fund transfer process. These go into reserve funds, and so they are, certainly we're going to be tracking them separately, but they go into the reserve fund. And so the Finance Committee will, it's not the Finance Committee that distributes them. It is, the school committee or the town administrator who comes to us with a request for funds. So it's not like we can slip in a vacation for Aruba or something like that. We're responding to the requests that are there. And I've already talked to Dawn and Dr. Girardi about the fact that we're going to lay out a plan. So we're not going to be responding to their bills. We're going to sit here and say, okay, what is the work that's going to be done? When is that going to be done? What work is getting paid for out of school funds, or the insurance or what have you? So we're going to lay out a plan, and so as we go along, there's going to be transparency in terms of what we're expecting to spend. Now, I fully anticipate that amounts will change, new things will come up and so forth, and we'll respond to those, but we're not going to be sitting here waiting for bills to come, all right? So, so I think, the town administrator already explained the fact that there is a process in place where elected officials are coming through. When we talked about this at the finance committee meeting yesterday, we said that even though, so we had set up a process a few years ago where even though the town departments can come straight to us, we'd set up a process where these things are first seen by you all, okay? And it's going to be that way even with the school committee, with these school committee expenses as well. You'll be seeing those before they come to us. So I don't know what more process we can put in place. I will say that, from our perspective, that money comes in and it is unrestricted. It's in the reserve fund. It can be spent for things. Now, again, we're not the ones that are generating the expenses. We're responding to expenses that come in. But if we had $100,000 left over and all of a sudden somebody came in with a cheap rate, perfect roof that we could put on for $100,000, we'd be sitting there probably putting that money into a roof, okay? So even though it is money that is in the remediation, okay, we'll be looking at the plan and the expenses that are in the best interest of town meeting voters. So.
Does Finance Committee has any plan to report to the Board of Selectmen on a certain basis to let us know where the funds stand and what's been done on a regular basis so that we're involved since we're kind of losing some of that power?
We see it first.
Well, all we do, though, typically is pass it along, just recognize that it came here.
So, folks, really, I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on this. It's not as though, so the answer is yes. I don't know that we're going to come and report into you. We're going to be coordinating with the town administrator. And if the town administrator doesn't inform you about what's going on, then I guess that's where you want to go. I have every confidence that the town administrator and the finance director will keep the Board of Selectmen fully informed on what's going on.
I think your point is well taken too.
Yes.
There's plenty of eyes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
on it. So
I think there's, there are 5 eyes there, 2 eyes there, 2 eyes here,
Yeah.
5 eyes on, or 7 eyes on my board, and there's a whole bunch in the community that are going to be looking at this very
You
closely.
only have 7 eyes on your board?
Yeah.
Odd number of eyes makes me uncomfortable.
7 sets of eyes.
So, all right.
Okay, so I realized, I saw I heard the comments that were made last, at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. I think that's those are prudent perspectives. We talked about those at the Finance Committee, and so we feel as though there's a process in place to allay any fears or any concerns rather that you'd have.
And my comments were in no way.
No, I understand. I understand that. And again, I said, those are prudent comments, and that's the reason why I came tonight, so that there were questions about what the process was going to be. But I just want to make sure it's clear that once those go in,
So you don't see it as a separate bucket. You see it as funds that could be used for anything.
No, I didn't say that. I said, I anticipate that there's going to be a plan, and we're going to apply these monies against that plan. I don't anticipate that if we have an extra $50,000 and some other department comes in, that we're going to be spending that on something other than schools.
Okay.
All right?
Other than school roof?
I'm sorry?
Other than school roof?
Well, so I think, we're not going to have enough money to do a school roof. But I'm just saying.
I think that was just an example.
Yeah, that was just, that was meant as an example. You said, and again, this is very prudent, if there's money left over,
I
is
guess I
it
should
gonna
have
be
meant
used?
school remediation.
Is it gonna be used for, is it gonna be used for something else? And, you know, some other department comes in
Yeah,
and,
that's,
and, you know, we need a new vehicle or this or that. That's not what we understand that's not the purpose of these funds. The purpose of the funds is to get the school, you know, the school back in shape. And so we'll take the steps necessary with the school committee to make sure that happens. So, no, the money won't be spent on anything other than school expenses. It may be other than, strictly speaking, the remediation.
such as.
Again, if something came up that the school committee and you all and the town administrator, everybody got together and said, Finance Committee, we want you to fund this, and we thought it was prudent and in the best interest of town meeting voters, then we would do that. We're not going to be making the decisions on our own, but we're going to be making decisions in the best interest of town meeting voters that we serve.
Because again, the other point would be, and I know you know this, that the reserve fund is for unexpected, unintended expenses, unexpected emergency, basically,
Extraordinary,
expenses.
yes.
Yeah. So I just want to make it clear, it's not going to be expenses that, well, they have a new program that they added and they don't have, that type of thing.
So-
If I could make one, I just also sent the complete breakdown of all of the costs, because they're broken down by what curriculum we're replacing, carpet replacements, air purifiers. There's a ton of detail in here. It's on the website always, but I've also sent you all the most recent copy too. So that literally ties out to the number that we anticipate asking for. So there really should be no surprises, but yes, there will be some curriculum replacement. We lost the leveled library, which is another whole story.
But that's all part of the remediation, and I
Yeah,
get
so
that.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying that, to your point, it is all under remediation, but I didn't want you to be surprised if you see something down the road that said curriculum. So it's not a new curriculum, it's replacement due to the remediation.
And I guess the other thing I would clarify is that we expect to have a plan in place well before town meeting where we'll be sitting here saying, here's what we expect. Now, between town meeting and the end of the fiscal year, there may be unanticipated expenses, okay? But again, I just want to clarify, you voiced a concern, a very prudent concern, that these funds, once they're in the reserve fund, theoretically could be spent on anything. Finance Committee is well aware that these expenses are meant for use in getting the school back up and running, and that's what we're going to spend them on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. All right, anybody else, anything else before we put that topic to,
Do we need to vote on it?
there's nothing to vote on.
It will be later.
Will be later.
No, I didn't know if
We could vote on B.
We'll approve the warrant article.
Is anybody else involved in B?
If you accept my recommended budget allocation,
during the budget section.
yeah,
Yeah.
that during the.
All right, so, okay.
Do you want to just go to that one now, or?
Well, we'll include, just not the,
Put it all
I
together.
wouldn't think it's necessary.
No, we could.
Go to it when it's time.
B,
So the other.
MSBA,
So the other reason we're here tonight is it's that time of year again. Those of you may recall, last year, Aaron McCloskey led the effort to submit our statement of interest to the MSBA program. And while we weren't accepted, we came close, according to them. So it's that time of year again to submit an MSBA core program statement of interest. The deadline is April 12th, so we are here before you to ask for your support. I believe we've sent an official documentation to Mr. Johnson. Happy to answer questions, but really it's a repeat of last year. This is the first step of the process. Do I need to read that?
No, but that's the.
Okay.
No, I have to
We had already done it on the.
Oh,
I have to-
sorry, this is our version, yep.
I have to read it.
I'm sorry.
Right now, or,
Yeah, right now.
oh, all right. Have that.
But just to be clear, it's really just the first step. So
Yeah,
there are many steps along the way. We have verified that if we take this step, if we get accepted into the first very early step of the program, if at any time the town does not have or does not support the funding, nothing will move forward. And nor will it prejudice us from submitting again. We checked all of that.
Okay. Greg,
Correct.
Stuck with Craig in my head.
That's cool.
Rhymes with
You know who I'm
You mean the
talking to.
Navy man?
Yeah, yeah. So, there's four, in our packet, when I'm gonna read it, can you just go over what each of the four documents that we're gonna sign actually are?
I think you only need to sign the,
Which one?
maybe I'll check with them.
All right,
We
well,
have to sign, no?
We already signed
We already signed.
okay, all
Yeah, it should be it should be the first one you have.
right, well, I'm gonna read this now, so,
Okay.
the motion resolved and having convened in an open meeting on April 2nd, 2019, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Maynard Board of Selectmen, in according with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest, form dated April 12th, 2019, for the Green Meadow School located at 5 Tiger Drive, Maynard, Massachusetts, 01754, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts Small Building Authority in the future. Roofing issues, lead paint, single pane windows, deteriorating doorways, falling plumbing fixtures. Failing plumbing fixtures, electrical HVAC restrictions, asbestos remediation as part of a total building replacement, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Have a second.
Second.
Okay. All right. So,
So we'll have you sign the document as, if you vote to approve it, Mr. Chairman. And then, but it'll just be that letterhead one, and then it just gets submitted with the rest of the application, in addition
Right.
to the school.
and it's the first one, resolved motion?
I had to make sure.
I think it is.
I think it's definitely that one.
It's this one.
Yeah, it looks like
Yep.
he's holding.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah, we have,
Okay.
I'm gonna pass those.
It's just different formats, just because they don't, the.
So you just need to put in her initials for seconding it, Melissa?
I wrote out her name.
Okay,
Perfect.
fancy, thank you. So, does anybody have any questions or comments about the SBA application?
yeah, that was one of my questions that I had asked Dawn about, if we lose that opportunity once we submit it and we get turned down the first time around, and you clarified it again, so that's,
We did.
yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
So if we're accepted, where does I know, and I kind of know I think I know broadly. So we would find out probably in December-ish when it would be, if we were accepted. And then from there, they start their initial evaluation. Is that how that goes?
Yeah, that really, literally just gets them on site to start talking about the building and
Okay.
they could go a million different ways with their they could go a dozen different ways with their
Right.
recommendations.
Yeah.
They could come in and say, just put a new roof on this entire building, or just replace this wing, or, and I don't wanna speculate. But
Right.
yeah, so anything from that all the way to a new building, and those who've been around long enough for the Maynard High School, I wasn't around, I don't think, the very beginning of the process, but I was here at the end, so. But yeah, there's a lot of steps along the way. It's very spelled out on the MSBA website, and I'm happy to send the links to that. But yeah, it's really just to get them on site, to start looking at the building, start the conversation. And I think that's even if I don't even think they come unless we get accepted, even just like past the first hurdle. I could be wrong about that, but that's the, either
Okay,
way,
so-
we're really just starting the conversation.
So where we weren't accepted the last time, they hadn't even looked at the building, correct? Like they just take our word?
Actually, I do think they do a tour.
Oh, do they do a
Yeah,
tour?
they did a
Okay,
tour.
all right.
Um,
Okay. I was just curious.
As part of their approval process, they wanted to be able to see it.
Okay.
I did watch the FinCom meeting from last Monday in preparation for tonight's meeting. And I know Peter Campbell asked some questions about relative to, there was, I guess the way I'll put it is, does the MSBA consider political realities of a community, for example, not being able to afford versus, and so in other words, if a town's not ready to move forward, and they have the next town who's already got everything in line and whatever, the likelihood, is it true that the likelihood is that the town next door that's already got, shovel-ready, quote unquote, would get bounced ahead? My concern is, would we be potentially missing the boat on getting some help to repair the roof in exchange for a pie-in-the-sky hope that they approve an entire building that we're not prepared as a community to move forward with, and therefore, instead of getting a little bit of help for what we really need at this point versus no help, we lose out. Is that a concern for us, or, that we're going for the full body versus the repair that we need?
So my understanding is that,
That we're
you can't be
reaching.
shovel-ready ahead of the process.
That we're reaching too far.
If you have funding, you have to go through their process. They have to decide when you're shovel-ready. So I don't think anybody can jump ahead of us. I think it's really needs-based, because 1 year we applied just for the accelerated, 3 years ago, we applied for the accelerated repair, and they decide what the parameters are gonna be on what applications they're gonna apply, they're gonna approve. That year, I think the roof had to be 30 years or older, and our roof was 29 years. So we didn't get the accelerated repair just to fix the roof. But I think they set the parameters. You can't be shovel-ready ahead of them, is my understanding, but I could be wrong. But that's my understanding. So I don't think that's a concern. I think the important thing here is to get them here to help us decide what the right thing is for the Maynard, folks of Maynard. And they'll help us with that, as I believe, the process.
But I guess, to make my point differently, if they say yep, you're good for a new school, well, politically, we're not, because we don't have the money. So we can't move forward with that project. So instead of getting the help that we need for the roof, that we could work out a deal to get the 40% of a roof or 60% of the roof and pay the 40% ourselves, which incidentally isn't necessarily the formula that's used. But if that's the formula that's used, at least then we can move forward with something that helps us. And, I just want to make sure we're not missing an opportunity by reaching too far.
I wasn't here, but my understanding is that part of their process was for you to look at regionalization even before you even got to the point of considering a new high school. Maybe they'll say, would you consider regionalizing your elementary program or the whole district? I don't know. And I wasn't here to know, but I do remember hearing about that.
Well, I was involved in the process. So.
So you know that they do a lot before they get to the point where they're recommending that you need a whole new building.
Well, in reality, they were telling us you need a new building or you have to regionalize. Those were the two choices.
Right.
They didn't say, keep the building that you've got, so. And I have, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Right.
Anybody else? Okay, that's it. All those in favor of the motion? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time this evening.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Do you want to take this now with you?
Sure, you got it. I've got the school committee.
I just want to scan that.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Don.
much.
Thank you.
Leaving?
That's
we-
it,
do
she's
we-
done.
We're taking a 3-minute break.
Okay,
That's it.
for real, all right.
Thank you, sir.
It's disgusting.
That's why I tried.
So they told
So,
You gotta turn the lights on?
All right,
he turned the mics off so that
All right.
part wasn't recorded.
start again.
All right.
Sorry, David.
Thank you, David. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You bang the gavel?
Hi, Dave, how are you?
All right. Mr. Mark,
My name is David
Wel-
Mark,
welcome.
resident of Maynard and a member of the Sesquicentennial Planning Committee.
What committee?
The Sesquicentennial.
Is it 150?
Say that 5 times,
Is that
please.
100?
You can
Tell
only be on
each
the
one of
committee
us
if you can say
individually.
it.
Yeah.
Sesquicentennial.
It's easy.
Sesquicentennial.
Sesquicentennial Planning Committee, which has committed to a new history book for Maynard. The committee has sounded out the Maynard Historic Commission and the Maynard Historic Society for contributions to the table of contents. This is basically a progress report for you to show you where we are now in the table of contents. About 10 chapters, each chapter broken up into 5 or 6 sections. We have room for an additional maybe 10 to 15 more sections, so we're looking for ideas to make sure we have as much buy-in as possible towards what should be in the history book. And perhaps also if there's anything in this list that you see in front of you that shouldn't be.
I don't have a list.
I don't have a list.
It was,
It wasn't in the agenda.
I thought I did.
Okay, so we'll get a list and we'll
We'll
just,
get you the list, and you'll see
follow up.
what David
Yeah.
has. It's not, so as he alluded to, he has the draft,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was too.
and he's just letting you know that he's working on it.
Yep.
But if you see the list, if there's anything you think needs to either be in addition to, or maybe expanded,
Or subtracted.
or subtracted.
So let's say we have writing like crazy, the book's moving along. Actually, this is sort of also a progress report because it has how many that are already at the draft level and how many still need to be, written from scratch.
can you subtract history? I thought that was
You
math.
can ignore history, you can efface history.
So we,
you can,
yeah, you shouldn't be able to do anything to it but report on it. But, so once we get it, we'll, I think that we're all familiar enough with your work that we won't be editing too much.
Ideas well, and that's
So-
it, that's all I really have to say.
So where else is the committee these days? I know there's a lot of things going on, so.
They have
There's a meeting.
They have a-
Well,
yeah,
the
they have a-
kickoff is gonna
kickoff,
be
yeah.
on the 25th of April.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Isn't it May?
No,
Their chairman,
April.
Ben DeMott, was on
April.
Town Planner Bill Nemzer's radio show today, promoting it. But, well, I mean, yeah, I also look forward to working with that committee itself
Yeah.
to make sure that they're moving along. But this is sort of the beginning stages because they need money. So whatever further fundraising they're gonna do to host the celebration itself, that's where they are.
What's the timeframe for the completion of the new book?
We're supposed to have the completed manuscript sent to the publisher by the end of June
Of this year.
this year. That's to have it in print for April of next year for the beginning of the celebratory year.
So does the new one pick up at a certain date, through a certain date, or is it
No, this is history back to the beginning.
the beginning? Okay.
Because the Centennial book is out of print, so we really felt that to make this at all interesting people in Maynard, it's going to be the entire history of Maynard.
Okay.
That's great.
Just so you remember, it's about this size, it'll be thicker, this is 128 pages, we're looking to bring this about 190, with about 190, 100 pictures, and it'll be a paperback like this.
Nice.
Thank you.
Great.
The town will buy it wholesale for $12 and sell it retail for $24.
Okay. Did you say that it was gonna be, the paper store was gonna sell it and things like that,
The paper
right?
store will also sell it, it'll also be available online at Amazon and other places, and people can actually buy it as an ebook.
Oh,
Oh,
perfect.
Nice.
For all of those sales, the town gets a royalty.
Okay.
Great.
Will we sell it in town hall, like at the treasurer's window or something like that?
Yes, you sell at the library,
Library,
at
yeah.
town hall, it could be for sale at the high school, it could be sell at town meetings, at the farmer's market, as many possible places as we can think of.
Great.
And who will be heading up those sales? Is it the Sesquicentennial
You.
Committee?
You got
For you
elected.
to say.
Yeah,
That was easy. Wow.
Mostly me, I'm retired from my day job, so this will be my major
That'll be
project for this. Just a reminder, when the town buys and sells a copy, the profit is $12 a book. When the paper store sells it, the town gets a royalty of about 80 cents.
Oh,
So
okay,
it's
all
best
right.
if we sell directly as many copies as possible.
Okay, perfect.
I just forwarded it to you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Perfect. Thank
To
you.
all of us?
No,
Yeah.
just to me.
Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Just
it.
me. I got it. I'll sell them to you tomorrow.
The royal.
I'll sell it to you for $12.
Perfect.
All right, well, we
No,
appreciate
look
it.
forward to
Yes,
And
very,
we look
very
forward to
much
the
so.
25th.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks, David.
yeah, let's,
Great.
Thank you.
let's
Very
get a
much,
lot of
David.
people out on the 25th, that's
Thank you.
important.
Yeah. I know.
Thank you.
Writing.
Is Mr. McCloskey present?
Ah, yes, yes. Oh, that's that.
Oh, it's that time of the year?
Good evening, sir. Hello, how are you?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Sarah McCloskey, I'm the Director of Public Works for the town of Maynard. Joining me this evening is Katie Chamberlain. She's a Senior Environmental Engineer with Stantec Consulting and is one of our resident water and sewer engineers with assist the town's Public Works Department. So the first agenda item that we have this evening to present is a request for contract authorization for the Old Marlboro Water Treatment Plant upgrades.
I have to read the motion. So I'll read the motion, then we'll move to the comments and conversation. In a motion to accept and approve contract for construction of Old Marlboro Road Water Treatment Plant upgrades. The contractor is Weston and Sampson, CMR, Inc. of Peabody, Massachusetts, with a total bid price of $427,400. This project will be funded through the Water Enterprise Capital Improvement Account. The funding allocated at the past May 2018 town meeting through a bond authorization. Construction is expected to begin in early spring of 2019 and will be completed by the fall of 2019. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. You can just
Now continue.
So the-
finish up.
This project started really 3 years ago when Mass DEP visited Maynard and provided the town with a kind of a consent order with a number of requirements. First with basically a study at the water treatment plant to look at water quality coming into the plant from the ground, look at our treatment process, and required us to do a number of tests to determine a way to improve the treatment process that we currently have at the plant. The plant's been there since 1999. There's 3 water treatment wells at that facility. One of them is currently offline. It's been offline for over 10 years due to the poor water quality that we're receiving from the wells. The other 2, the water quality has decreased, and we've seen an uptake in organics. So what DEP wanted the town to do was to improve the treatment process and identify what that would be. So basically what we're doing is recommending additional chemical treatment at that facility to install a process for adding potassium permanganate, which is a coagulant, which will basically coagulate the material that's in the groundwater and help our filter process be more efficient. The scope of the project also includes replacing the filter media, installing some additional chemical pumping, piping throughout, some painting of the facility, as well as some O&M upgrades. Those are kind of listed in that memo. Mass DEP has been involved with the project through the design phase, has approved the design, and is requiring the town to move forward with that implementation. So we designed the project, put it out to bid, received a number of bids back. The low bidder was Weston and Sampson with that listed price. So we're recommending that the town move forward with authorization of the contract and starting the project.
Is there any chance that, and forgive my lack of knowledge here, by improving the treatment process / upgrading the treatment plant, that you would be able to bring that 3rd well back online, or is that water quality just not even?
So yeah, we've done some extensive testing of that
Yeah.
well, and found that it's
It's just
poor
no.
quality, not
Okay.
To the level that we think it would be really inefficient to bring that well back online.
Okay.
I'll let Katie speak to the details.
Yeah, I mean, just taking a look at all the detail, the water quality analyses that have happened. I think last summer we did a whole suite of water quality testing. And looking at it, it looks like you'd probably have to implement a whole new type of treatment at the groundwater plant because of the high level of organics and like really high levels of like iron and manganese, more than what we're already experiencing.
Okay.
So it would end up probably being a really expensive way to treat a minimal amount of water at the end of the day.
And we kind of looked at this as part of the White Pond study, like, because we were looking at all potential new sources of water, right? Like, is this a feasible option? You've already got the well, you've got the pump.
Right.
Can we use it? It would have been a great answer to provide an extra like half MGD, but I think it would end up costing more money than it's worth to probably make that work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've seen some significant groundwater changes over the last decade in that area of town. What used to be relatively dry most of the year is flooded year-round now. So
Yep.
that's, impacting that wall.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Should we have to sign those? The yellow books?
Do we all need to sign? I don't know what you're signing. Okay.
Just one, I have to sign it?
Correct.
There's one spot that you all need to sign. I've got it labeled.
Okay.
Aaron, this was funded through a town meeting vote relative to, if I'm reading the motion here, from May 2018. This will not affect rates as we have them at this time, correct?
Correct. So this project was the funding for this project was voted on as part of the $900,000 water bond from the May 2018 town meeting, and that funded a number of projects.
Now it's built into our rates the last time we had a rate hearing.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So, I guess if there's no other questions, we can vote on this. All in favor of the contract? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we're going to discuss the water ban. I read the motion. The motion is to start the season with the permit restrictions, level 1 restriction, non-essential outdoor use, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., May through September. Stop the mandatory outdoor water use restrictions that started in June 2018. If needed, elevated water ban may still be issued at any point this summer to ensure that the town can adequately supply water for drinking and fire protection. Give a second.
Second.
Boom. So this means,
Passionate about water.
Yes, I am.
what-
Very excited.
so this means you can water outside of those before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m.?
So if the restriction is lifted, if the current restriction is lifted, and we have no choice but to go back to a mandatory annual water restriction, which
Right.
is
The
a 9
DEP.
a.m. to 5 p.m. non-essential outdoor water use restriction. So you would be able to water outside of those hours. During those hours, there's a list of acceptable uses like hand watering, watering for health and safety. None of those things are listed on the town website.
So this does this change the current restriction?
So currently, the restriction that was put in place last year around this time has not been lifted. So there's still the
So
no
right now,
outdoor
no one
water
can do
ban.
anything.
So,
It was like the super restricted
right.
one.
Say hi.
Put in.
Yeah, okay, so,
Yeah.
that was,
So
that
this
was
is
put in-
super exciting.
That was put in place after we lost well 06G,
Right.
Rockland Avenue well that we re-drilled
Okay.
twice and have brought back online now. Katie will go into it as we go through these slides here.
Yeah, we can kind of show you how we kind of came to this conclusion that we think that the town can lift that really restrictive water ban.
okay.
Okay.
At least for the short term, to kind of get through the spring and the summer, see how it goes. So we can present that information whenever you're ready. We've got some slides.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Oh, is it off? I'm an engineer, don't worry.
A water engineer.
Yeah, I don't know how computers work. So, I've showed you guys a version of this graph like a few times now, so you're probably getting sick of seeing it, but you're probably familiar with it, so that's good. So what we're looking at here is your water supply versus your water demand. The demands are depicted by those straight horizontal lines. So the average daily demand is about 0.75 MGD, and that's that black line going across the screen. And then you've got your maximum day demand. It's about 1.2 MGD, and that's that upper line up there. And we're showing both the current demand as well as the projected future demands, just for reference. And then along the x-axis there, we have the pumping capacities associated with each of the 3 groundwater treatment plants. So the first set of columns there is the Rockland Ave water treatment plant. The second set is the Old Marlborough Road water treatment plant. The third set of little bars there is well 4, and then where you see kind of the oval circle, that's cumulative of all 3 water treatment plants operating together. And then the last set of columns represents what the capacity would look like if the largest treatment plant went down due to some emergency, which could happen. So, and you see the 3 different color bars there. The blue bar reflects what I'm calling the current scenario. So basically, the wells operating at their historic average, and well 06G not online. And then you see the green bar, that I'm calling the near-term future. So that would be with well 06G back online, and we can do that now. Well 6G, we have operated it off and on. We're kind of working through some water quality issues and optimizing treatment, but it's running, it's pumping, it's good. And then what the orange bar represents is what I'm calling the medium-term future. So this would be all the things I've already said, plus the new well at the well 4 well field, calling it well 4A for now, with that online. But that's not really anticipated to happen for like another year. So we can't count on that right now. So, you know, the key takeaway from this, like we've been saying all along, is that based on how you're operating right now, you'd have a hard time meeting your average day and max day demand under normal considerations, but then if the largest plant went down, you basically would need to start calling your neighboring communities that you have interconnections with and talking about getting some extra water from them. So, you know, what can we do about this now to get us, you know, not having to do the really restrictive water ban?
So I have one question before you move.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sorry. The last bar is what would happen if it, something, you know, worst case scenario.
Worst case
essentially.
scenario, if the largest treatment plant goes down. The largest plant is Rockland Ave.
Okay, so that was gonna be my question is, do we know how much we used this past summer when we had that water ban? And I don't expect that answer, you might not have it right this second, so.
Our average, so if you look at, what this data is showing is our average pumping for the last year. So if you look at the fourth blue bar, that shows about 500,000 gallons a day. So that was our average demand across the system for the last 12 months.
Okay.
About 500,000 gallons. So
Demand went down.
You can see that,
Right,
you can see the drop versus our historical average day demand is 0.6 million gallons a day.
Okay.
Average day demand. So they did drop, and we did see that in our, the usage, and most recently in, you know, our water and sewer rates that we've received back. We've had a significant drop in usage townwide. People have been very observant of the water ban, and as a result, we have not collected nearly as much revenue as we've anticipated. So that's another issue. And we've had to cut probably the 2 budgets in town that were cut significantly this year. Were coming up. You see the warrant articles. I don't know if it's tonight. They'll be presented, but both budgets were cut to the tune of. So sewer was about $230,000, and water was $230,000 because we weren't getting enough revenue in this past year due to the water restriction and the water ban. And if we are not collecting that much revenue, and I can't anticipate collecting that much revenue next year, so I have to reduce the budget to meet the expected money. So that's also another issue. When you have a water ban, is you're not collecting the money that's needed to run the operation, so it results in jumping ahead on it.
Sorry, all right.
Everybody wants the water ban lifted.
Yes.
Okay.
You're not alone.
So basically, for the record, the DPW and Stantec are suggesting that we change the water ban?
We have more slides to go through before.
We have
Oh,
more
okay,
slides.
okay.
I just interrupted, sorry.
Yeah, no, then please
Okay.
do. If you have questions, it's easier to kind of address them.
I didn't know we had more slides.
Don't feel bad.
Stuck in my head.
Yeah, so how do we meet the demand? That's
Right.
the next question, right? Like, we're telling you can, but the graph doesn't really look like you can. So what the graph shows you, those pumping capacity numbers that are showed in the green and the blue bars, those are the average historical pumping rates. Those pumps are actually capable of operating at much higher capacities. We just, on average, haven't had to. So, you know, using the existing pumps at the existing wells that are currently operating, including well 06G, if we just increase the pumping capacity of some of these pumps, maybe not even all of them, maybe it's just a handful of them, we do feel like we can hit that max day demand. Though there would still be issues if the largest plant went down. There's no fixing that problem until we get a bigger solution. So that's when we start to talk about, the short-term solution versus the long-term solution. So the short-term goals is, let's lift this water ban. Let's do what we can now to provide adequate and safe drinking water, adequate fire protection, using the current sources that the town has available to them. It would not be providing a fully redundant water supply system. The long-term goals, though, would be not only meeting your immediate demands, but your future demands, the average day demand, the max day demand, as well as providing, the highest quality of safe water, and additionally providing a fully redundant water supply system, so that in the future, if a large plant did go down, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It would not be a crisis. We'd be able to react. So those are the two things that we were thinking about as we kind of worked through this problem to try to find a solution. So the solution that we came up with for the short term is shown here in this graph. And you can see just by looking at the average day demand line and the max day demand line, this is a positive thing. You're able to meet both demands by maximizing the pumping capacity at Old Marlborough Road, the 2 wells there, the 3 wells at Rockland Ave, and the 1 well at Well 4. And this includes making sure that well 06G at Rockland Ave, the one that we've been having issues with, is actually up and running and producing water at a good quality and quantity that we would like to see. So assuming that that all goes well, and we think it can based on, the operators have been running these wells for decades. So I trust them when they tell me that they're like, no, we can definitely get this amount of water out of these wells. I'm also looking at the historical data that I have available, and it does look like you can get this much water out of these wells. But it's important to know that this is not a long-term solution. As you pump your wells to their maximum capacity, if you keep doing that forever and ever and ever and ever, you're basically going to draw your aquifer down, and your aquifer's going to dry up. You're probably going to get some really crappy water quality, and it's going to cause problems. So this is not a solution that I would recommend doing forever and always. I say let's try it. It should work, and we're just going to have to be very careful while we kind of work through this, making sure to monitor the drawdown of the wells. We can monitor that on their SCADA screens at the plants, monitoring the water quality coming into the plant, making sure we don't see any really negative impacts, and monitoring the storage tank levels, making sure that we're managing the demand day to day. Is there anything else on this slide? Yeah, so this I think paints the picture pretty well that you can meet these demands, but again, largest plant goes down, you're still going to be in this situation. And in the long term, just and this is down the road, so I don't want to get into too many details here, but instead of trying to maximize all of your groundwater wells pumping at maximum capacity, we're going to talk about just operating them at their average that they're operating right now. Add in well 4A and add in White Pond, and all of a sudden your situation is a lot better. You can meet average and max day demand with all your sources online. You can meet the average day demand, and you can almost meet the max day demand even if your largest plant goes down. If your largest plant goes down in this situation, you just crank up 1 or 2 of your wells, and we know that you can do that for a short amount of time, and you'd be able to meet the demand. So, in summary, this is the plan of how we can try to avoid the water ban or the really restrictive water ban, like Aaron said.
There's room for flexibility, so it's up to the board on determining what you want to set for a water ban. The minimal water ban that we can have is the one that's a part of our withdrawal permit. It's the annual May 1st to October 1st. Non-essential outdoor water use is limited between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Or you can elevate that all the way to a mandatory outdoor water ban where we're currently at right now, or somewhere in between. You could do specific days of the week, even odd numbers, to try to give the system a rest. So a good spot, and it's either a decision you can make today or you can make it a future meeting. It doesn't have to be made today. We still have the current water ban in effect, and that's going to continue on. Obviously, with the springtime, we're going to be getting requests and your questions, right? Is the water ban still in place, or has it been elevated and lifted?
So, and one thing for clarification's sake, this is something that I think I learned last year when I was speaking to you about the level restrictions that surprised me. But this is not something, this level one restriction is not something that Maynard just decides. It's something that's Mass DEP tells us we need to because of our drawdowns. Correct?
It's a mandate from DEP, and
Yeah.
it's tied to a withdrawal permit.
Okay, all right. Just want to clarify.
That has been that way for a long time. That's part of our communication that we talk about. People don't understand that we. are
Right,
often-
exactly. I just want to make sure people are aware
It's
that
not a
that's
choice.
not.
It's not a choice. We have the choice to elevate the water ban.
Right.
Right, make it more restrictive, the board does,
Right.
at any time.
But it's not the town limit. I know that this part of the water ban we had to do more because of the Rockland was off, and
We lost
but even
the-
then
we
that
lost-
was.
We lost the one well, last
Yeah.
year, and, we were really concerned with our pumping capacity. Luckily, everything worked out last year, because we were running for the last couple of months. Plants do go down from time to time for, unexpected maintenance issues, but we try our best to get back on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's especially frustrating when we have like a month of rain. And people are saying, we have a water ban. We just had a month of rain. Why do we have a water ban? It's because we have to, and that's the issue.
Right.
So again, it's not a decision that has to be made tonight, right? We want to provide regular updates, about water restriction, conservation, kind of where the status of our wells are at. We have a number of water treatment projects going on right now, this included, as well as some distribution projects.
I think it makes sense if you guys are comfortable with the fact that we'll be safe and we'll be able to maintain, leave it at the level 1 and see where we go, see what the weather does, see what the, what the usage is.
What we'll do is we're going to continuously monitor this very closely. So I believe that the Board of Selectmen did authorize the town administrator a couple of years ago to be able to elevate it in the case of an emergency. So if that, if a situation happened where we did lose a plant, we wouldn't have to wait to a selectmen meeting to elevate the water restriction.
Do we,
That's something that we have to make a decision
is that something we have to redo?
to redo, yeah.
I don't know,
Do we do it by person, we do it by
Yeah.
position?
probably by position, because there would be a number of policies you would have to redo if I showed up sick one day, but no,
No, I understand that, I'm just
But I'm wondering
double-checking.
if it's per season or something, or per year.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna double check anyways, and I'll let you know.
okay.
We got a
So-
little bit of time.
It would be interesting to see,
How that works,
lift it to the restriction that you suggest here and see what the, see if there's a rush on water. And if we have to change it, but,
I think a lot of times after there's like restrictive water bans, you actually see that the water use doesn't automatically shoot back up.
'Cause
to
people are
where it
used
was
to it.
before,
They
'cause
got used
people
to,
are used
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, not always, obviously, but, so you might not see it like bump back up to the demand it was previously.
Yeah, and it's something that we were going to be watching very closely, and we'll be sure to communicate if we do
Okay.
experience some changes. Because, like we just said, we did get 06G back, it's not to the capacity that was before it went down a year ago. So that was kind of disappointing, but it's back online and we're running and turning off tomorrow.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? So the motion is to go with the level 1 restriction. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess that's for May 1st, May 1st through September,
September.
to October 1st.
So that's October 1st, basically.
Yeah, May 1st of October.
All right, so I guess we have to publicize that at some point,
We will.
exactly what it means.
Get that on the website.
All right.
Started from the tops.
Are you gonna stay here for that?
MS4,
Aha.
Thanks.
she just ran and abandoned you. Okay, so the MS4 permit and authorization. Well, I don't just have to read the motion, but the motion is just the motion to approve and sign the notice of intent for the MS4 permit and to authorize the town administrator to sign the permit documents. So that's a motion.
I second that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Everyone else was asleep, but, okay, so, I mean, that one's used.
Mostly housekeeping.
Yeah.
So, the town submitted their municipal separate storm sewer system permit last October, and the previous administrator had signed on the document. We heard back from the DP that the chairman of the board of selectmen, that's actually the person that needed to sign that permit, so they sent it back to us to get it re-signed. There's also that other form that you referenced, that you can delegate signature authority to the town employee for future filings, but for this.
You have that one.
I just have the paperwork. This does not have a signature page.
It's way in the back.
Back page is blank. There's no, I don't see a signature page. There's not. I think I'm gonna give it back to, I don't have a folder for it either. I have the contract folder for that contract.
Permits to be signed by.
I don't have the MS4 contract. I don't have an MS4 folder. But I just gave him we haven't voted, but if we vote, you have the authority to sign it.
There you go. Is that true?
You vote, you do have authority to sign it. Correct. Well, so
If we agree.
I do believe that you still need to sign the original permit.
That's what I expected.
Yeah, if
But only
it's there.
Correct.
So we'll find it.
That should be there. Okay. So, all those in favor of authorizing Greg to sign? That's it.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Thank you for seeing us.
Our pleasure. So far. Always.
I have questions.
Oh,
Not that many.
So obviously, I'm the fire chief, Anthony Stowers. This is Ron Calabria. He's the chairman of our fire station building committee. Also with us is Alicia Monks. Alicia works for Daedalus. They are our owner's project manager for the fire station project. So we kind of just wanted to give you an overview of where we're at with the fire station project and give you some ideas on where we think we need to go from here, or where we do need to go from here.
Might turn it off, chief.
Every time we come in here, I try to.
They were just using it, so let's play it now.
Pointed over there.
Alicia, can we play it back? I don't know. Can you hit the next thing? Emily? Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so we just have a couple pictures. So
It was off there.
Okay.
this is what the renderings look like now. We've had Doran Whittier as our architect, and this is what they've come up with for a fire station design.
Chief,
Yep.
if you can go back to that, just for the perspective, I'm familiar with the way it looks, but people watching on television or people in the audience may not know. If you were standing, say, at St. Bridget's Church,
Okay.
and walked straight across the street and then looked up the street towards the playground or the whatever, that's standing at St. Bridget's Church looking across the street.
This is what it would look like, correct?
Yeah,
That's the west.
I just want to give perspective as
That's
to.
the west view on Sudbury Street. The first slide is the north view facing the.
Right, so that's looking up towards Crow Park from down, say, in the parking lot at, just, it might not be exactly there, but in the parking lot at
Mill Pond.
the mill, looking up towards Crow Park.
So
That's
yeah,
the
so this-
side of the building, not necessarily the front of the building as you're driving down Sudbury Street.
Correct.
And this view here, you're actually facing Mill Pond.
This is what you see from St. Bridget, the one with the building, the blue.
So basically, we just kind of wanted to reiterate the history. Back in 2016, this board authorized the formation of a fire station building committee. That committee was formed and members were appointed by Kevin Sweet, and we first met in May of 2016. More history, multiple studies and reports dating back as far as 2007, indicating the need for either a renovated or a new fire station. In that time period, cost estimates have ranged from, estimates back in 2007 were in the $6 million range, and now we're up to about $14 million. So we're just trying to give you an idea of the escalation of costs.
You're done.
Oh.
So with this project, we use the phase approach. There's 3 phases. The first phase was to identify a location and obtain property for a fire station. So, and I don't want to go through the whole process because you should be familiar with it, but we looked at 16 sites. We really vetted 13 of them hard, and we came up with the current proposed location, which is about 30 Sudbury Street. It's the old 30 Sudbury Street. There was a house that was number 30. So we completed that. When we got approval at the March special town meeting, March of 2018 special town meeting, funds were appropriated and we made that transaction over the summer. So that land does belong to the town. Phase 2 was a little bit more involved in that, and that was having the architect under the watchful eyes of our own as project manager design a fire station. We went through multiple iterations of the building, and this is what we finally come up with. There have been some serious compromises in this building. We think it's a very, very cost-effective building as far as these can be cost-effective these days. The third phase is what we kind of wanted to talk to you about tonight. It's construction. So when we started putting this third phase together, or actually with the second phase, the idea was that we came back at the annual town meeting this year and had funds appropriated, or asked for funds to be appropriated to build a new station. With that in mind, it would be about $14 million. Obviously, we haven't done that. It's not on the warrant. It's not going to be on this town meeting warrant. But what we want you to consider is when we do ask for funds, we need to have a 5 to 6 month block of time ahead of time to do that. So, for example, if we were to ask for funds at this October, at a special town meeting, we would need to kind of start this process now, because we have to go through the bid process. And Alicia, if you have any questions, Alicia can explain this much more in depth than I can. But it's not just a simple process of saying, let's put it on the warrant for a special town meeting, 45 days ahead of time, and just ask for a block of money. That's not how we want it to work, because we want to have strong cost estimates so that people actually know what they're actually paying for.
Bids in hand.
Bids in hand. So each year we delay it, we can expect a 4 to 5% escalation, if not more. We've actually seen the cost escalate even higher than that since we've started this process. So somewhere around an additional $1 million if we ask for it next year. So back to the financing timeline. Question?
No, I'll wait again, it's okay.
So back to the financing timeline. Let's just say we were to ask for funds at a special town meeting in October. This would be the timeline to do everything that we need to do prior to that. So from May 13th to June 13th, we prepare and pre-qualify subs and general contractors. So that's subcontractors and general contractors. The week of June 17th, had a meeting to review pre-qualifications. 17th through the 28th would be revised bid documents to reflect the bid timeline. And then documents out to bid, bids due, put it on a warrant article, and then ask for the funds at a special town meeting. So if we were to do that this fall, we would need to have a decision by October 15th this year. May 15th, excuse me. The reason that that's important is because we don't want to go through the process of asking people to bid on a project and then not ask for funding. And Alicia can explain why, but once you do that, you're going to, number one, we're going to lose credibility as an entity seeking bids. But two, it's not good business practice. Do you want to speak to anything on that?
No, if you were to put it out to bid and then the project didn't go forward, the next time when you're ready to go to bid, there'd be a memory of that, and some people it costs them money to prepare bids. So they might not come back for bids because they'd be like, I got burned already once, I'm not doing it again. So you don't, it's not a bad thing.
On top of that, it costs us money to do this process.
It does.
So if we were to do that and then not fund it, we've wasted that money that we've invested in the bid process as well. Again, financing, there's multiple options. We've talked about some of these in the past. One of the charges of the original Fire Station Building Committee was to look at financing options, so we did discuss that. We had last year proposed an idea of paying for the fire station or just capital in general with growth, whatever growth the town sees above 3.5%, I think is what we talked about. So, for example, 129 Parker Street, there's growth there. We take that money that we see in revenue, growth revenue, and put it towards capital items. You can pay for it with a debt exclusion request or a combination of both. We've explored other options. We've explored borrowing through the federal government. There are special programs out there, and we're still looking at that. That would reduce the annual cost. It still requires town approval or town meeting approval to borrow, but that's an option.
And that would mean in this case, they would let us borrow money for 40 years. I'm saying that's a good idea.
Up to 40 years.
But it would be, the interest rate is not better, but they would expand the time period. We wind up paying a lot of interest. We have a meeting tomorrow with the government agency to talk about it. So it's an option.
We've explored options with former Congressman Songus' office, and unfortunately there was nothing available at the federal level. That meeting did kind of spur us to seek help from Representative Hogan and Senator Eldridge. Senator Eldridge was able to secure a $100,000 appropriation for us towards fire station improvements, is the way it's worded. So we're actually spending that money now. And what we're doing with that money is we're purchasing equipment that we can use now that can be moved into the new facility once it's done. So what that does is it gives us equipment that we need now, or things that we need now, but it also brings the cost down in the new building. It's not significant, but every little bit helps. And also, this is some of the things that we've purchased with that $100,000 grant. We're not done with that, so we'll be purchasing some more equipment. We also secured a $25,000 grant for fitness equipment, so that when we do move into the new facility, that's one other thing that we won't have to pay for is fitness equipment. So we're making the effort. We've looked, we've scoured the internet, we've scoured government agencies. There's no federal funds out there available to help finance this project. I wish there was, but there isn't. So in summary, we know that the board understands there's a need for a new facility. I don't think there's anybody that questions that. We've designed the most cost-effective facility we could, something that's going to serve the community for the next 40-plus years, even longer probably. And we're seeking the board's support on aggressively seeking funding approaches. Any questions?
Nope, not for me. I think we need to sit with, Ken and the Finance Committee and have this, another discussion at another meeting.
Yep.
Type of thing going forward. But before we do that, the Fire Station Building Committee, it looks like we all expired on
Yeah.
12/31/18. Do we have to re-up you?
Well,
I
so
think
depends on
technically we do.
if you've met, so,
Well, my reason for asking is I don't want to have to go through this and have somebody later on down the road and say, we didn't even have a committee in place, how can you do this, and fight us on something of a technicality. So we should probably just write the papers, and for the next meeting, just renominate you as, the Fire Station Building Committee or whatever, and just get that out of the way so that we, you've done, thank you, you've done, so much hard work. I mean, we were on that committee, so we know what was going on at the beginning. And the last, year and a half, you've been doing it alone with the chief. So I wouldn't want to have that work negated by somebody griping about a silly technicality. So we should probably clear that up. But I don't have any questions, but just, we need to get with Ken and those guys and see, where we go.
Yep, I understand.
I
understand it's a big expense.
Personally, I fully support the idea. We just need to do it the right way for everybody, so.
Agreed.
It's also, it requires discipline if we're going to fund it in a certain way, we can't then say, oh, but a year later. We've already seen that through one cycle where I thought last year that we were on our way to funding it in a certain way, and then it was an oh, but. And that's frustrating.
It's, believe me, it's frustrating for me too. You know, this isn't my building. I mean, I'd like to see a new fire station, but it doesn't benefit me personally. It benefits the community. It's a need that the community has. You know, my time here is limited. I'm gonna be retiring in a few years, and, but the community needs this. And
Is that news?
No.
Did you just make a news?
What did he say? What did he say?
He's retiring in
He said a
2
few years, but he's got,
He's doing a
we
Tom
don't know
Brady.
what the few years
Might as
there.
well select a fire chief selection committee right now.
You're gonna have to be here for the ribbon cutting, just so you
Well,
know.
I hope to be. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at. I'd
They
like
need
to
to,
see the station be built, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's for the community. And I think sometimes people get that confused. They think the fire department wants a shiny new toy. It's not for us, it's for the community. And we're here to serve the community, and this is gonna best help us do that.
Not to beat a dead horse, but speaking about asbestos, the fire station, from what I understand, is full of it.
Fire station has had 4 abatements. One of them was just prior to my arrival. Right after my arrival, we had an emergency abatement, and after that, I worked with Greg Lefter, who was the former facilities manager, and we did an abatement on what we could see in the station. Unfortunately, they didn't get everything. We had another one done last spring. There's still asbestos in the building. The way they look at it is they don't want to remove it, they don't want to disturb it
Disturb it, right?
unless it's a problem. So there's things in the ceiling, there's things behind walls, there's things in pipes that we can't necessarily see, and they basically recommend leaving it there until it becomes a problem. The stuff that we dealt with was all out in the open. But we have lead pipes, we have lead paint, we have poor windows, we have exposed wires, we have a lot of the same things that you would expect for a building that's the age that it's at.
At some point, we're gonna have a problem similar to what we had at the high school with the ADA issues too, where it's gonna be, you're not gonna have a choice. It's gonna be time.
Yep.
No?
No?
She's saying no.
ADA, because technically probably not, because this is for the fire station, so the chief could say that if someone isn't fit enough to climb the stairs, they're not fit enough to be on duty.
That might be why I have to.
Public access. Public access and.
Don't pick on him, he had new needs. But I'm talking about like public access. Well, because we've had that discussion before where
Yeah.
where
Right.
the exact same answer that you just said was, you know, well, if a fireman can't go up and down the however many stairs to get to the residence piece of the building, then he can't really qualify to be a fireman. But the concern was more some of the other people that work in the building and you know, general public, if people need to get in that building or want to go into that building, that access is difficult at best. So I don't,
The big driver for us though is the equipment that we have doesn't fit it. It's
Yeah,
not
we
even
know that,
just,
yeah.
Right.
we can't even just fix what we have, because what we have won't fit. You know, we have a ladder truck that's basically, it's in a temporary structure. You know, those are things that we need to address sooner
So-
rather than later.
So when we
Yeah,
started
we-
to do this, obviously, we all know, I certainly knew, this was the point that we would become faced with difficulties, where do you find the money? But the reason we did it in 3 phases is because, as the chief talked about, we rolled the rock up the hill and rolled it back down about 5 times. So we, you know, town supported us to buy the land, and when we went through the sites, and we went back through some history, every time anybody went through a committee structure and went over the sites, they were the same sites, because Maynard didn't get any bigger. So you're reviewing the same sites. So we purchased the land, and we designed a building, and that money came from capital stabilization, so we don't have to roll all the way downhill again. So I think we did it intentionally so that the only decision, and I'm minimizing it, it's okay, how do we fund construction? Because we've done this over so many times, and you can see what's happened with the cost. And I never like to say, well, if you don't do it now, the costs are gonna go up, but they're gonna continue to go up. We need, for me, a lot of the concerns I have about this station are it's not the healthiest place in the world for our employees to work. There's no proper air handling system. fumes from the trucks, we do have exhaust fans, but the fumes of the truck upstairs, there's only window air conditioners, and on and on, so it's not the best place, I think. You know, I said to firefighters so many times a week. Well, they're a lot. They're really good people. They work really hard. We have good staff. And it's kind of upsetting to me that they're working in a building that I wouldn't want to work in. But, you know, the $1 million ladder trucks in a tent. So we have to do something. The question is, you know, how do we pay for it and how long does it take for us to figure it out? It's certainly not an easy decision, but when you ask folks in town to do its committee, it was kind of obvious that once they did whatever they did, there would be a bill. So.
One of the things that Ron just mentioned is the rock not rolling back downhill. And I forgot to touch on this earlier, but phase 2 paid for the documents that we're going to use to eventually build the building. Part of phase 2 also included sending things out to bid, which we're not doing because we're not, again, we don't want to mess up that 5 to 6 month window. We're not going to put things out to bid because we're not asking for financing at the May town meeting or, you know, the special town meeting in the fall, unless we decide to do that. Right now, we're not going out to bid, so.
We have about $62,000 set aside to do that. If this goes on for 2 years, that won't be enough, but if it happens in a year or 6 months, the $62,000 will pay for the bids and the bid documents.
But the documents that we have paid for, they don't expire, so we don't have to redo that. And we tried to explain that last year at the town meeting, so we just wanted to reiterate that.
One of the suggestions I would make, and I don't know if this is actually a suggestion for you, Greg, or for the fire station, is that, so when you were talking about the documents and all the studies and everything else, I went on quickly to try to find it, and I went to the projects page, and it's not on the projects page, and I think it's probably because it's not an active project.
I think it might be under there.
But it's under the fire station building committee. So like when I searched, I found it, but it might be helpful for people who actually want to look at the studies to link that on the, maybe on the project page, you know, just so people know that this is something active that's being considered.
Yep.
So they can find information.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I think we need to David's point, I think we need to, you know, it needs to be a consistent, concerted effort to go in one direction. And I think that, you know, we need to bring the finance committee in to be part of that discussion. And then it's, you know, look, here's the way we're going, and we gotta go that way. We can't change again. So, you know, I don't think that's a extremely lengthy conversation, you know, and definitely I know that from this group and from that group, there's some, you know, rather strong opinions on all different methods and everything. But, you know, we ought to set that up so we have those conversations and then pick a path, and once we pick the path, we have no choice but to go that way.
And you know,
And if I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if we
No, go
fail,
ahead.
we fail and we pick another path. But we gotta.
Right, you gotta put a plan in place. and yeah.
Create it, take it to the end, and if we don't succeed, you know, regroup and start over. But to the point, you know, we talk about putting an RFP out. How long does that last? You know, so you don't want to have somebody bid on the same project 2 or 3 times, because like you said, it costs them money, it costs them time.
I feel like good for 90 days, 120 days.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's why we didn't do anything.
right, so we're kind of, you know, I think we need to kind of figure out what we want to do, you know, and then kind of, before we schedule a town meeting, kind of get a feeling for what the community feels that looks like. And then start that 5-month window. But, I mean, to your point, you know, time is of the essence. That building isn't getting any younger, the people in it aren't getting any younger, and the issues that, you know, are existing in that building aren't getting any better on their own.
Not only that, but the cost keeps going up every time we wait a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit more.
my only additional comment is, it sort of plays off of your comment, is that it's more than just a discussion with the finance committee and the Board of Selectmen. It's a community-wide discussion, because this will impact what we can do in other areas, school, senior center, you know, all these other things that people are saying we need, we want, we do, you know, we don't have, whatever. Well, we need to have that community discussion and have to get on board as a community as to what and how, and should we choose to use the process that we used last year, new growth, avoid an override, avoid a debt exclusion. How does that impact going forward? What does that mean to the schools and how the schools would be funded and how everything else would be funded? And until we get those people on board and stick to the plan, we're going to spin wheels. That's why we need to have that discussion as on a broader base.
And then just the last consideration I would say is the seasonal things go back to. If we were to have funding this May, we'd be building over the summer. When you have building closed in, we'd be building inside over the winter. If it's October, then half of that goes out the window. If it's next year, then it just pushes it forward. So when we're thinking about timing, there are practical cost considerations about time of year, whether you can get the bids and the money, but you can't start, and so forth. So, some of that's not controllable, but we have to go through the process.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of things to do. So there's only 2 selectmen meetings between now and May 13th. So if you would like, I can schedule a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to facilitate this discussion, as you alluded to. But although this is a topic that has been brought up multiple times at Finance Committee meetings by myself, it was also, nearly word for word brought up in my joint budget hearing in February with those 3 options. And my hesitation, though, is that 2 of those 3 options is reliant on a certain projection of new growth that I do not have. And so even if we were to have that meeting with the Finance Committee and the Selectmen and this community meeting, which in my view is not the first community meeting. I presented everything at the joint budget hearing meeting.
We're not, excuse me for interrupting, but
Yes.
I don't think I'm looking to have this put on the fast track for May.
Okay, but that was something that.
No, they're saying,
In order to go
this-
on the October, if it was to be
Right,
considered on the October warrant.
If we want to push it off, we push it off, but we still have to start
He
discussion.
wants to start the process in order for them to
Right, but
get.
so the Finance Committee has directed, and I agree with them, that we would not start that process without a solid financial plan in place.
Correct.
Correct.
So in order to start that process of that 5 to 6 month window, which is May 13th, I would have to have a certain consent by this board, Finance Committee, to whatever that.
Why not June 13th?
Well, we could, then we just, if we were gonna ask for funding, it would be a November special time.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Just use it as an example.
we're gonna, a year and a half ago, our special town meeting was in February
Right.
for the prior year, so.
You're not wrong.
The other option is not to go to town meeting with bids in hand, you go to town meeting with estimates, and we could reduce that time limit. But the
Okay.
goal was
That's
to
a
go
good-
with bids
that's a
in
good
hand, if
thing.
that's.
But there's still a certain assumption for the financing that I don't yet have.
Right.
And so
Right.
I would need a certain commitment from the school committee as to what their projected expenses would be in order to back up to my town's department's expenses, and then tie that into what my revenue projections would be in order to provide you, even if it's 3.5% or over that. There's certain calculations that I don't yet have, and I won't have till June at best. But that does require the school committee cooperation to provide me their expected expenses, which is a big ask.
The time frame we used, to be fair here, we wanted to demonstrate the 5 to 6 months, so we picked some dates.
Yeah,
Those
no, I
dates,
agree.
it's just
I think
5 to 6 months.
I'm just trying to make it real.
you make the meeting for whenever you want, in the sense that, there's 3 options, right? And the first meeting is, here are our 3 options,
Yeah,
what's
let's-
everybody,
yeah.
without even
Let's visit
considering,
them and let's
it's like, when you teach,
granted-
you open the door and say,
Although, Mr. Chairman, I did
what are the
s-
conversations?
I said that in February.
That's
Literally,
right.
that slide almost.
Yeah, it was in
exactly-
February.
Well,
yeah.
which I understand, but what I'm saying is, the larger group has February, it's introduced, they've kind of been mulling it, we've been talking about it for several years.
Sure.
And now it's time to sit in a room and say, A, B, or C? What's
Yeah.
the consensus?
Okay, and I'd love to have that conversation, and I would facilitate that with information that I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, that's fine, but.
And I know.
No,
to-
I understand you can't facilitate the dollars and cents,
Okay.
but you can certainly facilitate.
Which option
and we
we're
can
gonna go.
Certainly decide which would be the preferable option, and then, the dollars and cents might come back and say, that's not an option that's available because the numbers just aren't big enough. And then you have to, so I mean, it's just, the quicker the process begins.
Sure.
I don't mean to, and I'm not trying to, we tend to, at times, in the past, have rushed things onto town meetings, rushed things into
Right.
special town
Right.
meetings. We don't need to rush,
Absolutely.
but we need to, we need to have a plan, whether we're going fast or slow, we need a plan.
No, very good. And we've already started a lot of these, because we've identified and anticipated a lot of these questions, such as the impact of the average single-family tax bill, which I projected. And so, and that's mostly through the debt exclusion. Anyways, it's a conversation.
And I think to Chris's point is that you can, those points you're making, those are questions we're going to ask, and you want to come up with an option that's going to make the most sense and say, okay, this is what the scenario is if we decide to go with that option, basically.
Right, I do not yet have my recommendation for those three options yet, so that's also a good point. Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't trying to.
No, I'm not, I don't have a problem with anything. I'm just thinking it's just, let's go.
Yeah, I think so,
Nice of
yeah.
you.
These guys are waiting.
No, but that's your point, so.
The chief wants to retire, so.
I can't quit till the fire station's
But
built.
I don't think I can meet their May 13th timeline. That's,
I don't think there's,
As long as we
I
start
don't,
moving forward, we'll
Yeah.
we'll put a timeline,
but we
that's,
certainly are.
yeah.
Okay.
One other thing, you mentioned that reforming a committee, I think that can be done by Greg. I think he can appoint that committee.
Correct, so according to the slides, Kevin Sweet appointed it,
Yeah.
so.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm just looking at I'm just looking it up, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm,
There's a
part
lot
of
going
what
on
we
it.
talked about, what I emailed you about this morning.
Yeah.
It's everybody on that committee's, term expired 12/31/18, and I'm just saying that, we need to make it official.
And we would also look at the charge,
Yeah.
because they've already accomplished a significant portion of the
Yeah,
charge.
and it might, maybe it's the fire station finance committee instead
Yeah.
of building, because we're at the point, we know what the building is, we know what they're gonna be.
Yeah,
A different committee, but
Well, we'll probably
anyway.
need a building committee once the
Yeah.
financing's approved, like the school building committee. It won't have to be that
A lot
large.
of-
No, but there'll certainly be decisions that, like,
Committees coming
there'll
up.
be change
Yes.
orders, there'll be huge.
We got a lot of, we got a lot of committees.
I know.
When bids are awarded and we're gonna start to build the building, then you have the same kind of building committee you had at Dover High School.
You better get a gold helmet, a gold hat. You better get the best hat, because you're gonna be standing out there, I'm sure. You need
He'd
the
be a
gold, the gold helmet.
project
You get a
manager.
white one and he gets a
Honorary
gold one.
deputy chief.
Honorary boss.
I'll be
But-
watching.
But we appreciate it. I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate, having sat through the meetings of the, reviewing the sites and everything else. Certainly, the town appreciates your dedication to the task. Now it's time to, put our money
the
where our
wheels
mouth
in
is and
motion.
figure out what we're gonna do.
I can tell you, even though I don't like the number it costs, it's a really good building. It's very efficient. We visited all the buildings in the area. Everything in the building is double use.
The number,
So forth. So it's really pleased with the building.
tonight's number is not the highest one we've seen, by the way.
Well, it's not 20.
So, yeah, 23.
We did a really good
I
job
believe the
getting
highest
rid
we
of
saw was 23, but
We did a good job getting rid of the.
who's
20.
counting? So anyway, so we appreciate it, and we'll,
Thank you.
Greg will be, coordinate, sit down with everybody to talk about it and try and craft a plan and see where we move forward, so we don't let this, sit somewhere.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Speak to the police chief, please, he said, on Wednesdays.
Cough, cough.
Thank you.
Parking,
A wonderful subject, parking.
Yes.
parking committee. Thank you for your work that you've done with the parking committee so far. Parking,
Authority.
He's,
authority.
yeah,
So much work.
Do we,
he does so much work, not
do you
just
think-
that.
Do you think 7 people sounds like a lot? It's my only comment.
Jack?
Are we gonna be able to get 7 people?
Yeah, but they're all identified as
Yeah, it's like
basically
the
people
town
within town hall, so.
Yeah,
Right,
I know,
right,
just
right.
say, yeah, I know.
Couple of comments. When we discussed this before and you approved the parking management plan, Selectwoman St. John asked, how big and so forth. At that point, we were talking about 4 people, 3 staff, 1 outside. And after further review with some folks who've looked at it, that came across as lacking community input, sort of just another staff function. And so we went out and revamped something after looking at a number of other communities and cities. And the number 7 is not atypical. Relative to the specific concern, there are already 3 or 4 citizens who have raised their hand and said they're interested. 1 or 2 have specifically said, I want to. So I think that's a non-issue in this particular case. As I said, this is a follow-on to the February discussion where you approved the parking management plan. At the end of that meeting, there was a very specific comment from the chair that said, whoa, I want to understand very clearly on behalf of the board, what is the role of the parking authority? And the document you have in front of you is the result of the research we did around parking authorities across other cities, other towns. And backing up for a second, the notion of a parking authority was actually suggested by the police chief originally. As we drafted the document, we have found pretty much universal agreement across various town bodies, whether it's the DPW, the police department, the DPW, planning board, town planner, that it's really time to look at parking as a resource and manage it cross-functionally. So basically, I'm telling you there's significant support for this. Very specifically, the planning board would really like to have something like this. What you have in the document is both the broad spectrum up front on the first page, which is kind of the broad thing, and then a list of specific kind of things, and there's a mix in there of things that the parking authority could do on its own, but the predominant thing is a collaborative effort, whether it's with the ADA committee for handicap, or whether it's with the planning board, the town administrator, and you see it move into recommendations and collaborative kind of behavior. The one thing that is specifically in there that I think is important, it's fairly far down in the list, is that there is a requirement for an audit or annual report which says, are we meeting the demand? So there's a reporting function in there. And we've already touched on a couple of the other points, which is this is not proposed to be management of revenue or the actual activities. So we're basically saying use existing processes. We're not proposing that this parking authority actually manage the work. We're not proposing that they actually see the revenue. And I make that comment because in a number of other almost universally larger city kinds of things, a parking authority is a fiduciary body that actually manages all of the parking, including enforcement. They take in the revenue, and they have a fiduciary responsibility, a management responsibility. We're really positioning this, because we're in a small town, as using existing processes and leave the management structures for those processes in place. It is not an addition of staff, and we've already had the conversation about the number of at-large folks, and as I said, we have people who have already raised their hand and said, we'd like to do this.
Now, how often do you propose that you're gonna meet, or that the parking authority will meet? Is there a thought to that yet?
Candidly, I would expect there will be a bubble up front where people will come up and say, can you work on this, 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 and this? One of the early ones will be a parking permit process when you get into planning board kinds of things, and we've had a couple of requests for, gee, could you lease to us municipal spaces because of our business and so forth. The planning board is literally, could we have that now? Kind of thing. So once you get past a bubble and the group settles down, I would expect it not necessarily to meet on a regular basis, but on a demand basis. When we have a problem, it comes up.
And how would people know to contact? So like you said, like the planning board's already approached you. So who So is it you that's in charge of?
No, the assistant town
The
administrator.
assistant
So
town, okay, all right.
Megan Zamudo would be.
She would be the one who'd be kind of feeding you the, whatever the concerns are, or the challenges that people want worked on.
Yeah, it's deliberately set up so that the assistant town administrator is the functional manager, which
Okay.
means
So
there's
he would
a
be feeding her.
day-to-day visible presence for somebody coming in with an issue.
Yep.
And then that gets triggered
Yeah.
out to the, you know, we need to convene a work group or a committee to work on it.
And one of the advantages is that Megan does have experience in that area, so I think that's gonna be a big plus for us to be able to hit the ground running with that.
So who is the reporting to? Greg, town administrator?
No,
No,
they're
Megan.
advisory group. Oh, so yes, I'm sorry, yes. So I would be appointing them.
No. I said, who is the reporting to? Report annual on how well parking capacity and programs
Oh,
are meeting
report
demand.
annually.
To
Who
the,
would that reporting be to? To Greg's office? To the assistant town administrator, or to us, or who?
I think Megan is probably gonna be the point person, no?
But she would, no, she would be, she would, if she's part of the
Oh, I see what you're
authority, she would be creating the report. Who would she
Gotcha.
be forwarding the report to? His office?
I would hope, and this is not written into the document,
Okay.
but certainly that because the assistant town administrator works with the town administrator, let the board, you folks, become visible recipient of that, because we need to reinforce the culture of the parking is a resource.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's fine. I'm just, just a question. I like everything I read. I mean, it's, just 7 sounds like, so 7 becomes 9 if you put in the town engineer and the parking clerk. But it's just a lot of people. Hopefully we'll get enough people that show up, but.
But those aren't members, those are really advice kind of things, and you bring in the town engineer when you
I
have a
understand.
specific question.
I understand. But the problem, we have is that, again, small town, we're tapping almost always into the same resources over and over and over again. That's just the concern, is that how many jacks can we tap into? How many Rons can we tap into? Or how many times can we say, Jack, you got a couple hours next week for this committee or that? That's my only concern. And if you tell me you think you got it handled, I'm set.
Interestingly enough, of the people that have come forward, 2 of them are completely new. One of them is the gentleman who sent you an email.
Correct, yeah, okay.
He works for a parking company.
Yep, yep.
Another one is a younger individual who has a master's degree program on his own, took the MAPC study, and as a school project went off and built a dynamic model which would allow forecasting. Remember the MAPC study says we got a problem at 85%, we're down at 50-something. You can take his model, plug in the numbers, and understand by parking area or by street, when we get to this number of cars or people wanting to park, then we have a problem. So I mean, he's sort of.
Good for him.
Nice.
That's good.
Very
No,
nice.
I'm fine with it. It's just the number. I just worry every time we start a new committee that we're tapping into the same resources, so.
Yeah.
I'm excited by what I'm seeing here, and, I'm looking forward to having it get started. We don't need to vote on anything else for this.
No,
This is done,
yeah.
right? So this is just kind of an update where we are.
Correct, and then
So
this
we-
will still be discussed with
Yeah.
myself and Megan and Jack. Like, this is just to kind of let you know, in your,
Right,
as
but we-
Jack said,
right.
you asked for a charge.
Right, but
Yeah.
we're, that's it. We've voted, we've
And it
approved
has
it,
been-
it's a fact.
And it has been revised, so.
Yeah, okay.
To a degree.
You have approved a parking management
Yep.
plan which called for a parking authority. You wanted visibility
Okay.
of what the charter was.
Right.
And in effect, you're giving to the town administrator, go get this committee in place, use this chart. So the message from you is, use the charter document, administrator, to get started.
Yeah, that's, I'm good with that. I just want to make sure we didn't have to take a vote or anything in the next couple of meetings, that we're good. You two are in charge. Okay with me. But I appreciate it, Jack. Is everything
Thank-
else that
thank you,
you
Jack.
follow up
Update,
with?
Jack.
Thanks. Well, now, on to
Just some light reading.
draft articles. So we're all on the same page. At the last meeting, David asked a question about, we're accepting the motions for inclusion on the warrant. But what we aren't doing, what we haven't done, is voted whether or not we support the
Recommend support.
recommended support.
So I do want to clarify, Mr. Chairman.
So, I guess,
Yeah.
just a question, are we required, for the warrant, the only body that's required to put their recommendation in the warrant is the FinCom?
That's correct.
And typically, we've supported it on the floor.
So that's correct. So there's an assumption that by being in the warrant itself, it is recommended by the selectmen because it is a warrant by the executive body to the legislative body, which is town meeting. So you would almost, it would be difficult to understand something being asked by the selectmen for the town meeting to consider that the selectmen themselves don't recommend. But I admit that I was not clear on that understanding of it at the time. So because it had been, just as this evening's motions are to accept and approved, it didn't explicitly say recommend. And so I misunderstood that, and I should have clarified. But afterwards, I thought about it more, that I should have had the clarification to the selectmen that you are, by accepting these, recommending these for inclusion in the town meeting warrant. So now I'm asking you, in addition to these four motions, or these are four articles to be added to the current draft of the warrant, are there any articles that you would not like to be, as a body, submitted to town meeting?
So we had 2 meetings, right?
2 more meetings.
So,
But we
correct me
need
if I'm
to,
wrong, David.
but we need to publish the article, the warrant.
Right, so correct me if I'm wrong, in the past, as we got to this point, two meetings left, we've gone and we've had at the end of the meeting, or at some point during our selectmen's meeting, we've kind of got a printout of the warrant articles, numbered, lettered the way they are in the warrants, brief description, and then we've kind of voted them through based on the brief descriptions that way, on how we felt as a group. And then and at the same time, we've kind of assigned them to the person that will present and speak about each one.
Oh, so you didn't do it like piecemeal like we've been doing it? You did it?
No, we did them piecemeal.
We've done this piecemeal.
Okay.
We've done this is exactly what we've done.
Okay.
But our next step has kind of been, and we could pull the minutes from a previous year and look, but of a selectmen's meeting,
Sure.
we've kind of had it in not a graph, but a spreadsheet format where Article 1, and it would say what it was, and then, basically it would be kind of a checkbox for us, and we would vote whether or not we approved, and we discussed, kind of went through each one, and with the warrant in hand, and said, this is Article 1, this is an annual budgetary item, and it's the okay to sell equipment.
Had there been an occasion, because I'm just curious, had there been an occasion where the board had not recommended?
It's usually been recommended, but sometimes there have been votes that were not unanimous.
Sure.
Also,
and,
we had some
you know,
timing issues last year with
But
the
that's not
marijuana
reflected
stuff,
in
I
the
feel
warrant.
like.
Yeah. But
Back to back.
Yeah.
Special
Yeah.
in March and then the annual
But I
is in May.
don't know, I don't know that we've approved every one we've done all over time. But when you're talking about that, those have been, not so much financial things, but just kind of other things.
Yeah, there have been some,
Other community items that were,
there have been some that we determined weren't ready for prime time, but
Yeah.
that usually was at this level when we were talking about them, that they never made it past that. Being the nerd I am, I watched last night, I don't know if you went to the Acton Town meeting, but I watched it on cable.
I got a couple babies at home, my wife was not sure.
And I watched it, and, we can learn from the way they present their town meeting too. They do a bit of different thing, but one of the things I noticed is that when the articles are presented, the presenter says This was unanimously voted and approved by the Board of Selectmen. Then likewise, the Finance Committee, when they give their recommendation, they don't just say Finance Committee recommends, they say Finance Committee recommended, 5-4, or whatever the number happens to be. So it showed that there had been debate or discussion. Now, some of these things we don't debate. I mean, acceptance of the town report, we're not going to debate that. It's always going to be a unanimous acceptance of the, but some of them, like the one that I pointed out last meeting was the one that came up with, there was a tax. It was and as I said, I probably support it, but it had never been really discussed. It was a tax on hotels or on Airbnbs or whatever it is. But there had never been a discussion. It came from the administration, and it was there, and we had never discussed it. There'd been emails, I think, back and forth about how it had been talked about with council. Council, I think, was actually the one who recommended that we do it because of some other reason that might be coming down the pike. I don't remember the details. But the specific of the article that's been presented was never discussed
So
among
I
the board.
think I was confused, Selectman Gavin, that I thought by, just as we've been doing these piecemeal, that those were the opportunities to discuss those, as opposed to doing all, at this point, 34 articles at once. I had made the assumption that if there
Yeah,
were
that's
questions
fair.
on those
That's
5 or
fair.
6 at a time that you
Yeah.
were doing, that would be appropriate to
Yeah.
do it at that time.
But I guess our tradition hasn't been to do it that way, so.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I would also want to clarify a couple things for the Acton Town Meeting side. For the Finance Committee in particular, I've been to an Acton Town Meeting where they have then been asked who was those
Yep.
4 opposing votes.
We have had that happen
And
in
the Finance
Maynard too.
Committee, for that chairman, for that meeting that I recall, refused to identify those members. Because the chairman at the time of the Finance Committee in Acton felt like that was not relevant information. So I would advise this board to consider very carefully whether you would like to reveal dissension amongst the body. Because I feel very strongly that it's important that the board shows a unified front in whatever they provide to town meeting. You are the executive body. You are not 5 individuals at that point. You are the Board of Selectmen providing the warrant to the town meeting. And to have dissension amongst this body may have.
Or the
political
finance committee
ramifications.
or the finance committee, same thing
Well,
there.
there's, the only dispute I would have on that is if there is, and this is sort of a philosophical discussion, but if there is a disagreement among the members of the board or the school committee when they're making a presentation, the responsibility of the individual is to go down onto the floor and
Absolutely.
speak as a resident,
Absolutely.
which is your absolute right as a resident
And I
to
would
speak
encourage that.
and explain why you disagree with what the board may have done.
Sure, you don't-
That's the proper way to do it.
Absolutely, and including something doesn't mean you're voting for it. It just means that you're including it for the consideration of town meeting.
Yeah.
And so that, yeah, absolutely, I fully agree. I just want to make sure that we understand. And you know what, next year I'll have more clarification going into it, whether I'm expecting a certain recommendation or endorsement of these as we do these 5 or 6 at a time. So at this point, we do have 34, and so time is tight. Would love to get this thing published tomorrow.
Does 34 include the
ones that we're having tonight.
the one with
With the
Planning board
tax-
ones.
home rule?
the
Yes, it
tax,
Okay.
And the planning board ones that are coming from another body,
Yeah.
that we typically, yes, we should have an opinion on whether or not we agree with it or disagree with it. But those we accept because, and same thing with like a citizen's petition, where we have to accept it when it's presented.
I
There's no-
disagree, you don't have to accept the planning board one. You don't have to. It is your warrant. The citizen petition you do by charter, but the planning board you don't. And there's a couple of them that are just the standard zoning change and updates. There's a number that are, as was kind of said to you earlier, miscellaneous, so to speak. Like they are pretty new. And so if you feel like the town isn't quite ready yet, or if we're not quite there yet, so be it.
And that's where I guess we, as a board, need to change our approach because we don't have those discussions.
Okay.
we don't, we don't see the planning boards, we don't have a debate about what the planning board might be proposing for town meeting and discuss whether or not we think it's, we support it or not.
Okay, that's a good point. But again, we had Bill Nemser come in, just to voice or to answer any questions by the selectmen, when those various articles were brought up. And again, I'm not trying to say that you've missed your opportunity. I'm just trying to say that.
No, I get it.
Had anticipated questions.
We learn from it, and we develop a process that works so that we have that opportunity to have those discussions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can go through these before you do a motion to accept these 4 or 5 now, or whatever order you'd like.
Well, I'll read them, and then I think we'll ask for any conversation on them, right?
You have to do it individually or the
No,
whole,
we
the
didn't,
whole
we're gonna
thing?
do them like we did before, we're gonna do them all at once, and then
Okay.
take questions all at once. Motion to accept and approve draft control K, acceptance of certified free cash appropriation. Motion to accept and approve draft control SS, acceptance of home rule petition, special legislation concerning liquor license. Motion to amend and approve draft control F, sewer enterprise fund budget fiscal year 2020 as shown. Motion to amend and approve draft control G, water enterprise fund budget fiscal year 2020 as shown. Motion to approve the draft articles 34 in the warrant for town meeting as shown. Do you have a second?
Second?
Thank you.
And to the point we just had, the discussion we just had, to my recollection, this board, as water and sewer commissioners, has not had one discussion about the budget that's being proposed for sewer enterprise fund.
Which is
And
what?
it's $3 million.
Sure.
That should not happen. That's my point.
Okay.
We should have that discussion before it's presented as a warrant article with your assumption, and I get the fact that there was a disconnect from what I believe we should be doing, but with your assumption that by having it presented to us, $3 million now goes in front of town meeting without any discussion from the Board of Selectmen, and the citizens at town meeting have no idea what we discussed when it came to it, and the reality is, we haven't had a discussion at all.
Right.
So that's my concern.
Which is why I was expecting that discussion this evening for these articles, including those two, which is why DPW Director McCluskey was here and asking if you had any questions regarding those. So I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, and I'm not trying to either. I guess when he asked if we had any questions, I took that from the issue that he was talking about, not.
Me too.
So I have a question.
Nope. What's up?
Are these, to David's point, are these numbers that we're looking at right now for sewer and enterprise, the two enterprise funds, are those the same numbers that we were looking at in February 9th?
No.
So they've changed.
So, correct.
So, and I'm not, it is what it is at this point in a sense that.
But they were reduced, correct? Yeah, sorry.
So they went down, but we had this information, it just, the prices came down.
That's true. So we have updated information that is reflected in these
Okay.
budgets. And that was alluded to by the two earlier when, because of our failed well and the reduced water usage, it reflects into lower revenue.
And I know Aaron said it, but he's not here. What went down in each?
So I have it as the summary in the public content of the
Okay.
packet. And the FY 2020 water enterprise budget is at 9.68 decrease from FY 19. And the FY 2020 sewer enterprise is a decrease of 7.23 decrease from FY 19. I don't have the delta of what that shows from what you saw in February, but based on last year's, it's a decrease for both accounts.
Okay.
And I guess the devil in the details as to, and, Aaron's not here, but that's okay. But the type of discussion that we should have, we learn, should be, okay, as a result of it, where did the decrease where in your budget did you affect the decrease Did it affect salaries? Did it expect, most of these salaries, I'm sure, are contracted, so we're not going to change the salaries much. So there must be, something in there, most likely expenses, that were affected. But,
Capital particularly, actually.
Probably capital, yeah.
Because that's just.
so you get my point, that,
Absolutely.
and
Should be
that's, I
clarified.
think, is, shame on us as a board for not having the discussion.
No, and I take this fully on as my first shot at the annual town meeting, so.
No, I get
A
it.
lot of lessons learned. So, Mr. Chairman, I can go over some of the other articles if you would like. I alluded to the free cash, but I can explain the rest of it.
Well, I just want to, before we get to the free cash number, so the free cash number comes back to what it was, prior, and I think we all understand what we're looking at when we're looking at the free cash numbers.
Okay.
I just want to, just for the record, for conversation's sake, the free cash appropriation, we have in it the $610,000 for the Green Meadow School.
Because that's my recommendation to you.
That's your recommendation,
Yes.
and that's under the, kind of the not, although I think it's just semantics with what Ken was saying, as far as that goes, and playing the devil's advocate, which is what sometimes he likes to do, as far as if there's money left, what we do with it.
Yeah.
But the general understanding is that if there's money left in that account, that it's gonna go back into free cash at the end of that fiscal year.
Yes.
All potential, $100,000 roof fixes aside type of thing, but,
Yes.
and that's the intent.
Yes.
You okay with that? I know what you're saying, but at that point, I'm more comfortable with the FinCom as currently constituted than maybe I might have been several years ago.
Okay.
In terms of their, the people on the board and the way they do things.
Yeah, correct.
So I don't have a problem with it. I just stating for the record that is the intent, that if we spend $600,000, that $10,000 was back to free cash. If we end up spending $500,000, it's $110,000.
Absolutely.
So that's just, I want to just reiterate that I think that we believe, the five of us, that that's the intent of that monies.
And I also don't believe that we should be in the habit of doing this in future years.
That's right.
This is an extraordinary situation,
That's right.
but, it seems to me, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, but it seems to me it's a backdoor way around around having to have a town meeting to pay for the bills. And fine, I get it. But I think it's, $610,000 in addition going to, and I have the greatest respect for the Finance Committee. It has nothing to do with the individuals on the Finance Committee at all. That's not the issue. It's what I believe in is good government, is that people elect the people to make the decisions relative to where their tax money is going. And when you abrogate that by turning it over to another board, that then we hope will do the right thing, and I expect they will do the right thing, and it will be limited. I just think that's not the greatest government.
See, I don't have an issue with it because I feel like we elect the moderator who's appointing these people. There's so many eyes on it, and it gives us checks and balances on all this money in a really efficient way to allow things to move forward. So I feel comfortable with it, but I do agree it should be a one-off and something we do in this unique situation and not something we get the habit of doing yearly.
I would be very, very disappointed with a lot of people if I found out that, if we went down the road and found out that this extraordinary event repeated itself. I mean, it's
Yeah, but it may not even be to this magnitude in the future. It might be something else. Oh, remember that time that we put extra money into the reserve fund to avoid having to go to town meeting? Let's do that again.
Well, this is the 4th out of 5 years that we have come to town meeting with a line item or a warrant article to cover a extraordinary school, unknown school expense. So that has to stop. I mean, that's, to your point, present an article and put it in front of the town next time, but it's, this is the 4th or 5 years that we've been, kind of sitting here, kind of last minute, as far as the town meeting and the budget process goes, looking for anywhere from a quarter to, now we're at $610,000 for an extraordinary item. They're not really that extraordinary, and other communities don't find them as such, so it needs to be repaired, but that's a whole different discussion. I don't know, is there any of the other items on here that require much of a conversation, because we've kind of been through them all?
Right, so.
Free cash was the only one that we.
And the home rule petition, if you
Home rule
want.
petition.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, and we've been through it.
If
Also,
you want
we're
to
only-
add a fourth, that's, I'm just,
Well, the home rule position too, my understanding is we're just voting to get it on a warrant item and then it's up to town. Because I don't
That's
know if I
right.
necessarily agree we
That's
should have
right.
another package store, but I have no problem voting to
Right.
put it on town meeting. and
Right,
letting the
yeah,
town
oh,
decide
yeah,
it, yeah.
that's all we're
Yeah.
voting tonight, is to put it on town,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
warrant.
and that's what they're expecting too.
And that's all they,
Yeah.
that's all they expect. It's,
So I think that's fine.
And if you
So
can
that-
clarify, Greg, how this applies,
The quota.
that's,
It won't be counted on the quota.
that's the,
In the future for
but to the point that David raised earlier, and that kind of, Melissa just alluded to a second ago,
Yeah.
that's what, the Celemonies are expecting.
Correct.
they're asking.
That's
yeah.
right.
Correct. But now, we talk about we're supporting these things by putting them on the warrant article. There are some things that we, even though we put it on the warrant, we don't present or we don't advocate for.
No.
So this would be one of those things, we don't necessarily,
Endorse
not
it.
that we wouldn't if we voted that way, but if we don't advocate for it, or we, 4 of us or 3 of us disagree that we want a new package store in town, but it's on the warrants, it's up to somebody else to advocate for it.
Sure, and I'm trying to think who would that be, and I'm not sure.
And who's
I-
going to present that?
I don't know,
too?
well,
the presentation of it is just, the presentation of it at town meeting is just handing it to the moderator to hand to the clerk. Walking past Dick and
Yeah.
giving it to Michelle and saying, here's the article,
Yeah.
and you can walk back to the microphone and make a presentation, or you can walk back to your chair and sit down.
So if town meeting allows for non-voters to speak, you could have the attorney speak on behalf of the Celemonies.
well,
But
again,
here's the thing. Here's the thing about this one, because it's kind of tricky. Why would the Celemonies have a right to speak? It's not their license. To the point that was raised earlier, it's just another license for town. They've made a suggestion that we need one. Maybe you could make a case that he come up and do it, but
well,
are they even town residents?
No, they live in
no,
Stowe.
they live in Stowe, but
So
the
they
issue,
can't really address
is, if we as a board, going back to the point we had just a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
minutes ago, if we as a board don't believe we should push this forward,
Then don't.
then don't.
Yep.
Don't approve it. And or you can vote against it, and if the majority votes for it, then it's 3-2. But what I saw last night, again, watching the Acton Town meeting, is the moderator would introduce the article, and there was the big one was Kelly's Corner.
Oh, yeah.
But the moderator would introduce the article and would say, okay, Board of Selectmen, you have 12 minutes. And the Board of Selectmen would take their time and they would present. Then he would say, and this happened on several of the articles, there is another presentation on the other side of the article, and it was a former selectwoman over there that speaks con to most of the articles that they have, and she was told, okay, you have 8 minutes, and she did her presentation in opposition and made her arguments, and then the debate took place. So she had, it appears, and I'm going to have to speak to them over there, but it appears that, it's the moderator's meeting, so I'm not taking over his meeting, but it appears what they do is they have these pre-meetings where everybody knows who's going to present pro, and if there's an opposition, the community meeting must have determined that there's going to be a presentation in opposition, because she was well prepared. She had things on the screen, she had,
It's well rehearsed. Town moderators, Peter Berry.
Yeah, but he's not, he didn't run
Yeah,
again, so
it's
it's now
gonna be,
a woman.
Joanne.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's well rehearsed. They go to the police station, yes, it's every committee
Yeah,
member.
it was evident
Yeah.
that it was run very, very smoothly. But the bigger point is that who presents? Well, it was clear that there was an opposition. The person must have made it clear at various meetings that she was in opposition, and she presented her opposition.
So that's, I mean, it's a consideration. We'll be meeting with town moderator Dick Downey next week, Tuesday. And so we'll just ask him how he feels about these things. But I would encourage the board to kind of let them know how you feel about it.
So for this home rule petition thing, I mean, to what David just said, like, I don't have a problem putting it on the warrant, but I don't know if I necessarily would want to support it and represent that to the town personally.
But I think what Dave's point, if a quorum of this board doesn't even feel like if you're going to vote that way anyways,
Yeah.
you don't have to put it on the warrant.
But I don't mind putting it on the warrant because I think these things should go to the citizens of the town, and it should be whatever
They should
the
vote on it.
quorum allows. So I don't think my individual vote as a resident should really matter.
You're a select woman.
I'm a select woman, but I'm also,
when we
but
don't
that's my
want to-
personal decision. But if other people feel like they want to
Abstain?
support
That's
it,
why they
No,
elected
but-
you to kind of make some decisions for them.
Well, if we walk it across the stage, we don't have to recommend or not recommend.
Right.
They,
Okay.
you know, we don't have to. We don't have to, make no recommendation.
Okay, I'm probably the other side. So you,
If we disagree on it, we can make no recommendation, that's fine too.
yeah.
It speaks for itself, I mean, it's pretty
Right.
self-explanatory article, read it and let people see
Well,
it.
and this sort of goes back to the point I made when they were here, is that I think that that the state should give this right to the community, basically the executive board, to make a determination as to how many liquor licenses we need, not leave it up to a town meeting vote and send it off to,
eventually go.
Yeah.
let it
Kinda
go to
like
the
the
state.
marijuana thing.
But, my own opinion is, if the majority of this board does not believe that we should be filing a home rule petition, we should vote that way and not put it on the warrant. But, I personally would favor it because I think that, it's, the reason is because I think that really it should be open as to how many we have
But
based
they
on.
also have the understanding that they may not end up getting it, just because.
It has nothing to do with
okay.
who came here
Yeah,
tonight to
yeah.
speak.
All right,
Yes, you're
okay,
correct.
okay.
So, I mean, do you want to take that one separate and vote on it? Or do,
So if we're gonna vote in that way, like, my comment would be, like, we have been focused so much on economic development and bringing businesses downtown and improving the quality of our downtown. And I truly think it deteriorates the quality of a downtown and the way it's gonna attract other businesses if you just see package store after package store. And I think for the size of our downtown, we have a lot of package stores. So I don't think we wanna be one of those towns where every 10 feet you have a bar or a package store. I don't think that's who Maynard is. We're thriving as like an arts and a cultural district, and that's the kind of economic development I wanna see personally. So that's where I'm coming from.
You're making an excellent point.
So we have the three now, and one is
going to be moving to 129 Parker Street.
All right.
it's next to the cleaners right now on Main Street, and that's moving. And there's the one on Main Street next to
Like the Thai
Flowers
place,
Cleaners?
yeah.
it's near
Flower
it's
pot.
down there. Yeah, flower pot. And where's the third one?
The third one's out at 86 Powder Mill,
Yeah.
the owl.
Right.
Oh yeah.
which you don't even see it.
So there'll be one on either end of the town, so to speak, with after the one moves to Winton and Parker. Just for clarification.
I mean, listening to Melissa, I totally agree with her. From an image standpoint, we're trying to change our image, clean up our image, and I think that's not something that we want to add to.
There's also the whole logistical side of it too. If they're not expanding their actual footprint, if you go into that
Correct,
store, there's
correct.
no way that they could offer a competitive pricing on liquor without eliminating their food and other selections, because the way that the liquor pricing works in that industry is to buy in bulk and to buy, certain things, and there's just no way they're going to be able to do it. So I think we're basically saying Russell's convenience store would turn into a package store, and just a package store. It would no longer have that place where you could run to when you want to grab like little groceries or things, and you're not near like 7-Eleven or something like that.
One of the reasons that they are doing this, I believe, is because of what's happening across the street. their business is not going to, it is going to struggle with across the street. Now it's been approved with a Dunkin' Donuts and a convenience store and a, and a gas station. If somebody wants to pick up the newspaper or a quick thing, they're going to run in there and get their Dunkin' Donuts coffee and a newspaper, and the business across the street is going to be hurt. So I think the purpose of his approach, and he's not guaranteed to get this, but I think the reason he wants to even pursue it is because he feels it gives him an opportunity to change his business model in a way that helps him. So he sees this as an opportunity. That's what I believe. He didn't say that tonight, but that's what I believe is the case. He's facing a new business across the street, and if he doesn't get this, I think he fears he's going to have to shut down. So what we'll have is an empty building, and that's the conundrum.
Then they'll give us two, because the other guy's going to the mill, to 129 Parker Street. But I don't think it's our responsibility to worry about what someone's in their store is going to look like inside, or what their profit margins are going to be, or any of those things. The Salamone family's been doing business in Maynard and Stowe for forever, and they do it quite well. And we sat here tonight and asked him point blank, do you plan on not selling the other products? And he said, no, we're gonna do both. So I don't think it's, if they were to end up with their license, it's not our responsibility to worry about how they make their money and what their profit level is gonna be. I mean, that's on them, and I don't see them putting up anything that would, what can they do in that small spot that's gonna make it look any less of what, was Russell's offensive today? I mean, they're gonna probably keep the same name and everything else, so.
Yeah, I don't see this as an issue about a discussion about Russell's. I see it as a discussion about, do we want to expand the number of liquor store licenses that we have in town? And always, I will say it again, I hate the fact that once a liquor store license or a regular pouring license gets given to somebody, it becomes a commodity that they can then spend, they spend their $150 to the town, and then they can go out and charge somebody $10,000 like they did it.
You can't on a house rule.
You can't on a
It's
liquor license.
special, and it has to come right back to the
So
town hall.
that's the way it should be for the other ones too. But anyway,
Well,
so.
I think also to their point, the number of people in town who are gonna have an opportunity to purchase alcohol is gonna grow significantly in the coming years with the different people building apartments,
young professionals moving
condos, everything else, huh?
Well, no,
Young
with all the
professionals,
apartments
doesn't matter.
and
What do you think
the
that-
development that
You
we've
think those
got going on.
140 beds worth of senior citizens in the back aren't gonna drink? They gotta drink. They're gonna find a place to drink. I mean, just because you turn 70 doesn't mean you don't drink, but,
All right.
I don't know. It just, I don't.
Drink more.
I think it's I think we put it on the warrant and let the town decide.
Yeah, we were right.
I mean, I'd say.
I think they'll make the decisions
I'd
for
vote
us.
it on the warrant and let the town decide whether they want another liquor license or not in town.
But I do appreciate
make the
Melissa's
case.
comments.
No, I understand what Melissa's saying.
I
but
get it, I get it too.
I
It's
don't
just-
want to police their profit level.
I'm fine putting it on the warrant too. I was just saying I didn't want to recommend it
Yeah.
personally.
Well, that'll be
We
next-
don't have to.
that'll be another
And we
conversation.
don't, that's why we should take that
Yeah,
take that vote.
That'll be
Either.
another conversation when we do the articles the other way, on the spreadsheet, like we usually do.
Okay.
So, all right, any discussion about the other ones anymore? Anything else? Before we vote on all of these together? And this is just to put them on the warrant?
Yep.
All those in favor? All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I will look back, we'll find that spreadsheet, and it'll be on your next meeting.
You're the best. You're the best guy we got here right now.
In this seat.
Listen,
You gotta-
yeah, right.
you gotta keep him on his toes.
In this seat.
So the conversation about printing the town warrant, right, I know that a bunch of people chimed in and a bunch of different voices were heard, and was there a consensus?
Of this body? I'm sorry.
I don't know that we had a consensus. I thought we kind of were aiming in the direction of that, history says
Yeah.
We should go ahead and do it.
print it and mail it,
Yeah,
and
and
there
then
and there was some that thought that was inappropriate, and perhaps at town meeting, we kind of look into that by, somehow or other, but,
I think
that's
those
still-
of us in dissent gave up because we decided we would do it this year and then reevaluate for next year
Right.
when we had more
That's the
time.
direction I still am going with.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just that Becky was kind enough to do research to see if there was a difference between the Beacon Villager and Action Unlimited.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to speak to that really quick?
So the Action Unlimited, I think I put it in the notes.
Yeah.
It was like $4 grand
About-
and change.
Yeah, about the difference in pricing. If we go the regular route, it's over $4,000, and because of the amount of pages this year, it will be probably closer to $5,000, and it will probably be about $1,000 in mailing. So last year's at 40 pages was roughly 4,100 someplace in there, at $110 for the mailing, so under 5,000. If we go with the Action Unlimited, it will be an insert.
And we don't know what about postage.
There will be no
Right.
postage for the Action Unlimited.
So you save the $700, $800 on the postage.
Correct.
so does it go to every home?
Yeah.
It does.
The Action
Oh, yeah, it
Unlimited
does.
goes
So-
to every
so-
single home.
Some ends up in a circular.
So it would be like the Council on Aging thing?
Yeah, right, as an
So,
insert.
so
yeah.
it goes in just like this in,
It will be in the newspaper print, it will not be on this,
It'll be just like the Council
so
of
it's not,
Aging
it's not a
print.
really, it's an insert in the sense that it's printed as
Right, and
part of the
that's
paper.
way
Yeah.
the town used to have them printed.
I like that.
It was on that newspaper print for years.
I like that too.
I mean, I'll make sure the proof looks good, Becky,
Yeah.
we're not gonna, if it doesn't look good, we're not gonna do it.
Okay, I mean,
I kind of like that idea.
I don't,
Saves us money.
I don't disagree with that idea. I'm not sure, did everyone in town feel the same way?
Well, the Action Unlimited goes to everybody's home.
But
If it's thick, trust me, they'll open it up to see.
Yeah,
I'm just,
the charter gives us, as we read the charter gives us the authority and the discretion to decide how it gets delivered to, how it gets made available to each household. So what we may wish to do is to have a non-binding request of town meeting at this year's town meeting, saying, hey, we sent it out this year through the Action Unlimited.
Actually, it's not a bad
It's been
idea.
mailed in the past. We don't have to send it at all.
Get some feedback.
What, if town meeting gets given the choice of between those three, what would be their choice?
With the cost
Mailing it with
breakdown.
costs, mailing it with costs, printing it and sending it out with no mailing costs, or printing a relatively small number, putting them at available locations like the library, put them online, put them at the library, town hall, and whatever, and save the town $5,000 each year. What would you prefer? And see what town meeting votes to do. Non-binding, and then when it's time for us to do it again, we either follow their advice or not.
Or send to all the voting citizens.
But you don't know, you don't want to, you can't pick and choose who you send your warrant to.
The other thing that probably if we decide to go through the Action Unlimited, one thing that might be helpful is if we, again, communicate that ahead of time. That's, so people can watch for their Action Unlimited, that it will be going in within the next few weeks.
Put it
to
on the
check it.
website, Peter, yeah.
So,
Well, it may even be
Maybe,
worth
or-
a reverse 911 to say, watch for,
The light up board
This year's
by the
warrant.
Boys and Girls Club and the
I don't know
fire
if that's,
station.
I don't think you have enough words.
Would you say like town
Enough.
warrant and Action Unlimited?
Oh, so if I do a reverse 911, I'll probably get a couple calls.
I'm sure you will.
Why you calling me about 911?
Watch for this year's,
Right.
watch for this year's warrant in Saturday's,
Or
I
even
don't
even
know.
if you don't do that, do some kind of announce it on, well, announcing it now, putting it on the Facebook pages, maybe try to get, exactly, just try to get it out in a couple different,
Okay.
maybe.
Ask
put
the
it-
Beacon to
maybe
write a
put it in the
report-
School notes for, the go home.
look at our competitor.
principals, have the principals add it to their messages.
Yeah, the principal
Yeah, so
messages
the
is helpful.
principals, I know that, I think Fowler and, I don't know about Green Meadow anymore, but I think Fowler and the high school, they all do it electronically, so it's all just email, it's not actually paper. So it would at least just kind of get the word out a little bit more, and even maybe have, Amy at the Council on Aging let you know,
I
let them know. Or just
I would
kind of-
just bring them 100 copies and leave them up there.
Post, see if
Give-
WAVM will put up one of
give
those
it to me.
things that comes up on the screen every now and then, watch.
Right.
Just
banner.
print me 100 copies, I'll bring them up there and drop them off.
So is that so now I have to ask, what direction is the board giving?
All of the above.
I would say the action on
Action
unlimited
unlimited.
for this year.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, is that
Just vote of one, even if I say no, I lost.
fair?
It's a democracy.
Fair. All right, very
But I
good.
agree with that, I also agree strongly that we should take David's statement, and that's what we talked about last time too, is to make sure that we ask the question at town meeting this year for next year.
Okay,
Kind of prepare them.
okay.
Town administrator's report, if anyone looked at it this week.
Good
Did anyone look
night.
at it this week?
Yep.
It's a beauty, it's a beauty.
Yes.
It's a,
Do you need that?
You are
had no
phenomenal.
pictures. What happened to the pictures?
Do we have to do?
What happened? Your daughter wasn't able to draw?
While she's finding that, I'll just go over this really quick. Just a couple things to highlight from the town administrator's report. I am waiting to hear back from the development team for the proposed Powder Mill Place to find out if or how they will counter our offer.
Did you hear the latest on that one?
Besides what I wrote here, no.
Yes.
Then no.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead,
Well,
because you
there's
do better than me.
It seems that the Acton Housing Group gets updated information that we don't
A
get.
lot quicker than us.
Because they,
About our offer?
well, no.
No.
About their plans, but again, you don't know if you can trust what's written in minutes of another town's
Right.
boards. But they basically said that they were told that they're going to mass housing.
Okay.
And that doesn't change anything, other than the fact, why then would Lou
In a way, the options.
Lou Levine tell you something different than what they've told Acton?
Lou hasn't told me anything.
Oh, I
So-
thought your message said to us earlier
Yeah,
that
he told
Lou's...
Adam Costa. So,
Oh,
so
okay.
good point. I'm just saying that they, Attorney Levine's response is exactly how I thought they would respond, which is, we don't want to pay you that much. We'll call you. That's how negotiations go. So I have no clue how the Acton affordable housing. I don't know how they get their information. I can only go by what I'm told. And-
Yeah, I don't even know what crew it is. I'm gonna look for it. I think I saved it.
Okay. I don't even know who's on that.
Former selectwoman is the chair. And, what's her name?
I don't know. But, you know, if town manager already had something to tell me, he would just call me. So I'm not that.
Nancy Tavernier, she's the chair. But anyway, it says,
Oh, I know Nancy. Okay.
it says on, it's their minutes of February 25th, Acton Community Housing Corporation,
Yeah.
and under developments, Powder Mill Place, joint Acton Maynard developer is applying to mass housing.
Okay.
He
So-
threatens that all the time.
Yes, he has, but, you know, so that, but the response we got from Lou through Adam is different, so don't trust anything.
The lawyer, you think he's gonna tell you the truth?
Hey, I take offense to that.
So they're telling
his
Acton one
client is
thing, telling us
reevaluating
another
the
thing.
options.
Unless it resembles our remark.
She don't want to know anything about it.
I mean,
Just being cautious.
he's
He's not gonna tell us today is Tuesday if you ask Lou, so.
well, it says his client's reevaluating his
Reevaluating.
options.
Yeah,
One of his
right.
options is to go to mass housing.
That's
So
not
really,
reflective of all the
Well,
lawyers.
also, the board has been asking them for months to reevaluate themselves, and so maybe they're actually getting around to it. So,
Okay,
and then I just to clarify, we're still working with town council for our corrective actions and appeal of the DLS citation. I'll let you know how the results.
Although-
And then Zaxter's reopened, so you can rent a bike down the street.
And we're gonna have a
I won no
grand
votes.
opening on May 17th?
Yep, so we're trying to make sure that, keep the hype up about the bikes in town, and so on May 17th, town planner Bill Nemser has organized a spring celebration, so to speak. Just really a way just to make sure people know about it, and that'll be May 17th.
To that point, I notified Bill today, when I got his email, that same day, May 17th, for the majority of the day, is the senior project day at the high school,
No.
which I participate in, and I'm sure a lot of us want to participate in because it's a fabulous thing.
Yeah.
So I told him it conflicts, and I'm going to be at the high school doing that because it's such a wonderful experience.
I will somehow probably be omnipresent as well.
Yeah.
She gonna be there?
Go to the next thing.
Oh, no, she's a freshman.
And then I do encourage, as I always do, the board and the general public to read the rest of the report. The departments are doing great things, particularly the fire department this last time. I didn't get a chance to compliment the chief in person publicly here, but please read their reports because they're doing a lot of great stuff. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
That's it? You done?
Keep going if you want.
No, it's enough.
I don't think we've gone long enough. Can we just-
Oh, where do we go Friday night? Oh, Friday night we went to the open table celebration.
And then I went to the cultural council.
I missed the cultural council, but I
Very
know
cool.
that was a lot of fun for a lot of people, and I heard they're gonna make the name Maynard Cultural District.
Right.
Oh,
They're
excellent.
gonna do that.
Yep,
So
they're
it's
keeping the
Maynard
culture name.
Cultural
They're
District
dropping
on Assabet.
Assabet Village,
Oh,
and they're
okay.
going to Maynard Cultural District.
I like
And
that much better. I like
Yes.
the cultural plug part.
yeah,
I do too.
other than
I
that,
like the art.
the golf course did open, though. You were right. I saw that in your report.
Did you check it out just to make sure it was factual?
Weren't they coming to present to us
Yeah.
at some point?
Trust but verify, Mr. Chairman.
I can't trust anyone. I had to go look for myself.
Aren't they coming to present to us at some point?
Well, no, we did an audit on them, so when I get the results of that audit, I'll
Okay.
share with you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Alright.
I like to see that.
Sorry.
Excellent.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
That's it. That's all I had. Melissa?
I don't really have anything. I had a question on Powder Mill, so you answered it. And then I will be at the Aspet Valley Chamber of Commerce auction this Friday. That's all real quick.
Okay. David?
Nope, you mentioned the Cultural Council Awards Night, which was a lot of fun. Armand was there, Greg was there, and a lot of laughs. It's great, and, the award that was given to the Fitzsimmons family just is emblematic of what the town is all about. They were somewhat, John
They were surprised.
Fitz was
Yeah.
somewhat embarrassed.
Yeah.
Funny as heck.
They are. The whole family's humble.
Yeah, but it was really a nice night.
Armand?
Well, add to that, I had a great time that evening, and it was nice to be able to be there and represent the selectmen. The one thing that I want to just to kind of share with the board, and I'm sure you're probably aware of that, but I serve as a liaison to the EDC committee, and I have the opportunity to probably sit in most of the meetings. And I want to commend not only Jack, but also the committee members that have done some real great work and, pushing forward a lot of the agenda that they work on. For example, I think Discover Maynard, and I know Linda's here, and she probably knows more than I do, but Discover Maynard should be close to a launch by the end of the month of April, from what I'm hearing, maybe. I don't know, they were supposed to meet on Monday, and I don't know what happened there. And then there's a business guide that they're working on, and I know Katie Young is behind that with Bill to put together a nice business guide, and looking pretty good looking at it. And then the economic action plan is going to be put in place. We're going to be working on that the committee's going to be working on that to put that forward, and that should be something that we want to get a leg up on the competition, as I call it, with the master plan. But I think we're definitely going to get that going before the master plan comes out. And then the other piece that I'm a little bit of a pest when it comes to first impressions. And there's a lot of things that in town, and I've brought this up before, that needs a little cleanup. So talk about driving into town, especially when the gateway to town, you see some things that really don't look appealing. We're making some headway. We're going to have, there's a progress report on the John Deere equipment place. Bill and Caitlin and I think the state has met with them today. And I'm hearing some good stuff that we're going to make some progress on cleaning up that place. So that's one good thing. And the other piece, and Greg knows about this, about the signage by the firehouse. I would love to see us personally take the sign down and then figure out what we're going to do later, because right now it just doesn't look like a nice, appealing sign when you drive into town. A lot of times those letters are crooked, they fall off, they kind of look like, and you don't want that image. We're trying to clean up our image, I think, in town, and want investors to come into town and invest into our town, so we're going to start cleaning up a little bit, so make it look appealing, so that's my point. And I'm sticking to it.
That it? That's the last one. That's the last point of the night. No, we're not done yet. On Thursday afternoon, I'll come in and sign I have a day date, but after my day date, I'll come sign those books.
Okay, and if any of the other selectmen.
Sure, I'm making my wife
stuff
take
on
me
my
somewhere.
office, I have all those back contracts that need to.
I know, I skipped over Justine. I want to make her worried.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, what happened?
To go back, there's one more thing if you could.
Are you,
Yes,
If you
do
have
I have anything to say? Actually, one thing that I wanted to say is I wanted to thank the fans of film and also the Morenos for all tying in together with the cultural week. It's really, it really has a lot of different aspects to it. It has the art, it has a film, it has their restaurant. So I just think it's, again, the community coming together and just kind of becoming
And Selma Hayek.
becoming one, and Selma Hayek. But and also I know that we'll be seeing the Morenos again in a couple weeks at that hearing, and I just appreciate so much that there are residents that are able to and willing to continue to invest in our town, and I really hope that we can all get out and continue to support them, because they are what make our town, and so I'm very impressed and very happy for them. So that's it.
all right, that it? So we have one more motion that we missed.
It was late.
They put it at the back page.
We did.
We don't do business on the back page. So
The blows.
it's a motion to revise. Yeah, it's a motion to revise the approved liquor license for online wine and liquor, license number 89501-PK-0676, amendment application for pledge of collateral, pledge of license. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do you have any discussion? This is something that Becky's been working on with the
Right.
the
It's all
change.
just paperwork stuff?
Yeah.
Correct, you'd already approved the license transfer, but when we sent it to the ABCC, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission for the state, they said, nope, you gotta do the pledge of collateral too.
Oh,
Okay,
so we have to sign the pledge of collateral.
so also,
Sent it to documentation.
Oh, and we did.
so all those in favor?
Thank you.
All right, so before we adjourn, we want to welcome Emily.
Yes,
our new-
thank you.
New
WVMer?
WVM person.
And an award winner.
And congratulate her on her recent success in her equestrian career.
Emily, you're going to be the permanent, replacing Mike?
All right.
All right, thank you.
Try to smile a little more. Mike was very outgoing, bubbly. I know your mother probably saps all the energy from you, but just bring it a little more. Oh, you're a freshman. You got 4 years of this.
Oh.
Goodness. Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? The next meeting is April 16th.
Fantastic.
Peace.
I apologize, I'll be with Mickey.
So I'll see you. When?
I'll be with Mickey.
But I'll see you Thursday.
All right, so when do you need those signed, Becky? Sometime before Thursday? Is that what you're saying?
They're gonna be in my office.
And you have to
By
sign,
Thursday?
or can I use them?
I think
Sign,
my
sign.
daughter was in a movie.
Got it.
Selma.
Selma Hayek?
Yeah.
I like it.
She's from Mexico.
She was in
There you go.
a couple of...
Becky, is this your copy?
I think it was Greg's.
Oh, that's great. All right. Ladies, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you too.
Hey, listen.
So,
I know, so we have doctor's appointments Thursday morning,
I will say.
so I gotta get her a room, I think.
Got a lot done today.